And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Sunday evening. Didn't have a video yesterday, but there's too much going on in the world of baseball right now to ignore. So we're going to do a Sunday video. Remember, we're going to be with you guys live every single weekday, Monday through Friday anyway. Between 9 and 11 is usually when we'll start. We'll try to do some days earlier. That way we can get some of our East Coast audience, and some days later we can get some of our West Coast and international viewers as well. But I really do appreciate you guys joining us once again. Hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, Upside Sports Network, to be notified whenever we do go live. But welcome in, Ethan, Andrew, Mark, welcome in. Appreciate you guys joining us once again, and Merry early Christmas to every one of you guys as well. Ethan, Rangers signed Jock December 23rd last year. Maybe they got something in the oven. You gotta hope so. I mean, that's every fan base right now. Everybody's hoping they have a present underneath the Christmas tree for their favorite team. Gifts of Bo Bichette and Tucker under the Toronto tree would be nice. I think there's a very good chance you're going to have something even better than Bo Bichette up there in Toronto, Mark. The rumblings that I'm hearing started about 3 days ago from Jeff Passan when he was on the Michael Kay show. He kind of dropped a line in there. I had to rewatch the interview again this weekend just to kind of grasp how he phrased it, and I don't think he wants to report on anything yet as far as concrete going on with Toronto and Bregman, but from the way he was phrasing it during his interview with the Michael Kay show, he's sitting on something, and maybe it's just a matter of time till this deal gets done with another team, or maybe it's a matter of time till it gets done with Toronto. But Jeff Passan was sitting on some information there regarding Bregman and Toronto. He didn't want to give away the bag here, but he did leave enough breadcrumbs to really let those of us in the baseball world really kind of guess at what he could mean as far as how serious the Toronto Blue Jays are as suitors for Alex Bregman. Reports have since come out from several other sources, Rosenthal and others, that Toronto certainly has a good chance to sign Alex Bregman. Now, of course, last year he thought he'd be competing for a World Series up there in Boston. Obviously, didn't work out quite so well. He certainly had a great first half, injuries, and kind of recovery from the injury kind of impacted things in the second half for Boston. They just kind of ran out of gas in the second half. But I wonder if he goes back there. But the other thing with Bregman is he's always known postseason competition. This was one of his first years where he didn't really get that long postseason run that he's used to having all those years in down there in Houston. So with Toronto going to the World Series, makes sense that he would want to get back into that type of contention. Are the Blue Jays a lock to get to the World Series again? No, by no means are they a lock to get there, but they certainly are trying to put their best foot forward, adding a couple arms to their bullpen, solidifying that rotation with Dylan Cease, possibly adding not one but two star hitters to that lineup in Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman, both of which Jeff Passan said they could walk and chew gum, get both of those two deals done this offseason, in addition to adding Dylan Cease. That's what, 3 of the top 5 free agents on the board this offseason? What an offseason it would be if they could get that deal done. So I wouldn't necessarily count your chickens yet if you're Toronto, though. But this certainly has a lot more appeal and a lot more real traction behind it from the sources that we're seeing out there, that this could legitimately happen. Would I say it's overly likely? Probably not. But Jeff Passan said he would not be surprised. In fact, he would put, more likely than not, that they end up with 2 of the 3 top free agents out there on the hitting side in Tucker, Bregman, and Bellinger. So we'll see, where the Blue Jays ultimately end up in their free agency pursuits. Appreciate you guys joining us. Got a lot to get to today, so we're going to try to run through a few of the other headlines. Welcome in, OC. Appreciate you joining us. Bregman Toronto has legs? Absolutely. One other bit of news from the Boston Red Sox is they have acquired Wilson Contreras from the St. Louis Cardinals, basically retaining $8 million in the deal, sending 3 pitchers back to St. Louis to get this deal done. There are some reports out there that say that this trade basically ends Boston's pursuit of Ketel Marte. I doubt that completely ends them. Marte, I think, is supremely available from the Diamondbacks, and I think the Boston Red Sox, even with the money they're taking on from Contreras, could easily afford a Ketel Marte on their roster. What team couldn't? He's only making like $12 million, so I wouldn't buy into that hogwash as far as the trade talks being essentially over now with the Contreras addition. Contreras is going to be their first baseman. I'm curious to see that they only retained $8 million and still got 3 prospects out of it. Congratulations to the St. Louis Cardinals, again going to Boston to get another player off of their hands that they really needed to. First was Sonny Gray, and now it's Wilson Contreras. Maybe they triple dip here and go for Nolan Arenado once we turn to 2026. But if they don't bring back Bregman, I think that has a legitimate chance to happen as well. Welcome in, Larry. Do you think the Yankees will sign Bellinger or trade for Tatis? Trade for Tatis is less than 0% chance happening. That's never going to happen. I doubt he gets moved anytime in the next at least 2 years. I think that's a pure pipe dream from a lot of fan bases out there. If you wanted Fernando Tatis, the time to try to acquire him was when he was being a knucklehead with that team a couple of years ago. We talked about it extensively on this channel. There was some talk from A.J. Preller to the media about their hand-wringing about what to do with the Fernando Tatis situation after they had just given him all this money. Do they void that extension? Because they were within their rights to do so at the time due to countless motorcycle accidents and the PED suspension. Lots going on with Tatis at the time. That's when you buy low on a player like that. With that supreme superstar caliber bat and the ability to play in the outfield as successfully as he does, he's a premium defender out there. That was the time to try to acquire him. They certainly ain't trading him to you right now. Could they get a king's ransom and then some? Absolutely. But it ain't happening. The time to try to acquire him was 2 years ago, or maybe 2 more years in the future when they might rethink their calculus once again. But right now, he and Merrill, those 2 guys, I don't think you could open up Fort Knox and convince them to trade him. Now, as far as Bellinger, I think the 2 the 2 New York teams, are the very likely destinations for Bellinger. I say 2 Yankee teams because essentially it's the Yankees East and the Yankees West. I mean, how many different times have we seen the Mets go to the well here and take former Yankees and sign them on with the Metropolitans? I mean, it's not just recency either. Going back 20, 25 years, this has been a pipeline for years now. And they just finally outbid the Yankees for a premium talent. In the past, it would always be aging stars who weren't necessarily, worth the contract they were getting from the Mets. But hey, we want to stay in New York. We want the money, so we're going to sign here with the Mets, even though the Yankees wouldn't give us the same deal. Nowadays, Juan Soto, anybody? He signed with the New York Mets because they offered him the best deal. They were able to outbid the Yankees for him. Now, you might argue and say, well, the Yankees could have come up to that offer. They could have, should have, all these other kind of things. They could have done different things and offered him different amenities. And who wants to play for the Mets when you have the history of the Yankees behind you and you could retire a Yankee? That obviously doesn't matter nearly as much as it used to. Yankees fans, I'm sorry to say, I mean, the time of you dominating in the late 90s, early 2000s is long, long gone. And yes, you guys are supposed to be the team that we're supposed to point to and say that's the best team in our league because they're the most well-run, they have the best prospect system, they have all the money in the world. They ain't that anymore. The Dodgers certainly have the best farm system in the world right now. They also have the most money to go out there and spend, whether you believe that there should be a salary cap or not, or limits on deferred money or not. The fact is, the Dodgers have certainly risen to the top in Major League Baseball. The Yankees could get there eventually. CBA negotiations will have a big impact on this, but how many times are we going to hear about the Yankees just coming up short on certain free agents, or just deciding we wanted to save our money and go a different route? It's time that we address things, that the Yankees, while they certainly have a large payroll, are not our Yankees from our youth. All right. There's a lot to get into, like I said, today, so let me go ahead and just kind of run down some of these other items, and we'll catch up on the comments here. All right. There we go. The Mariners, they say, are interested in re-signing Eugenio Suarez. The only pushback I'll say on that is if they don't get the deal done with Donovan, or Marte doesn't end up in Seattle, or they don't sign Okamoto, or Bregman doesn't end up there, which I don't think he really is an option there anyway. But there's so many other options that I think the Seattle Mariners are trying to pursue before they even go after a Eugenio Suarez. I think this was lip service made by certain people to at least make it more palatable for the free agent to find a better landing spot. To say that the second time around with Suarez did not go well or as well as they had hoped would be a massive understatement. Suarez had his time in Seattle, traded away as kind of a contract to dump off on Seattle, or off of that roster anyway, and they ended up trying to reacquire him because he had a great first half. He was truly prolific, and ultimately it just didn't work out. You mentioned in the comments there Murakami going to the White Sox. We'll get in that one here in just a moment, but as far as Eugenio Suarez, I think this is pure lip service to make the free agent look a little bit more desirable on the open market. I think it's a tip of the cap to the agent, to the player more than anything else, and more of just thank you for your service kind of a thing. But do I believe he'll end up back in Seattle? Absolutely not. Other big news that you mentioned there in the comments is the White Sox bringing in Murakami. Excited to see what he does. 2 years, $30+ million deal to go to Chicago, and I like the term of the deal here. Gives the White Sox, I believe it's a $17 million average annual value for around $34 million. Kind of tied with some of their best free agent deals that we've seen in recent memory. Andrew Benintendi, anybody? How well did that one work out? I think this deal has a chance to work out significantly better. Obviously not the same length of term on the Benintendi deal, but I like this deal all the same. 2 years, and if he really hits really well in Chicago and doesn't have those strikeout numbers that we're all worried about, he could really be getting a nice payday once that contract comes due. So, curious to see how he does in Chicago. They need some young guys, as they always do. They're trying to finish off their rebuild. This, I think, kind of fits the timeline of the team that they're trying to build, and they might even be able to retain him if he does hit well for those White Sox. So those are some of your bigger stories from around Major League Baseball. There was one other one I wanted to get into. Trying to remember what that one was. Talked about the Padres the other day, the Strahm trade and so forth. Strahm happy to go back to his former team. I think I might have gotten them all. All right, let's go catch up on some of these comments here. Let's see. I heard the Phillies are exploring other catcher options. I mean, I'm sure that they're at least investing or some energy into some of the other catcher spots, or some of the other ways they can improve their catcher position. JT Realmuto, I think, is still going to end up back there one way or the other. I just think this is more due diligence from that front office more than anything else. Larry, do you think they'll go after Bellinger? Yes. We went after that one already. OC, do you believe that Marte gets traded this offseason? Thank you for the welcome. Absolutely. I do think Marte has a very good chance to get traded. I would probably put it at about 80% right now. I think if his name has been out there this long, and the teams that are in on his market, decided to go in other directions. Shane Baz getting traded to the Orioles from the Rays, and now with multiple arms going to the Cardinals and the Contreras deal, tells me that maybe these teams might not like the prices that the Diamondbacks are setting on Ketel Marte. I don't think that he's necessarily unattainable, though. I think there's going to be some team out there that sees that contract and is like, we need offense desperately. He is absolutely an aircraft carrier in our lineup if we bring him in. Do we have the young pitching assets that we can part with to be able to make the deal happen? And I think there's more than a few teams that kind of fit that description. I think the Rangers need an upgrade to this offense. And if the other teams are kind of bowing out due to the price, maybe, just maybe, if they include a guy like Kumar Rocker, that could at least get the ball rolling on some trade talk between the two teams that were in the World Series a couple of years ago. I think there's a couple other teams that would make some sense. The Pittsburgh Pirates as well, even though they made the trade for Brendan Lau, if they were able to get their hands on Ketel Marte, now they've got, 3 different guys that have at least better offensive profiles than what all the other positions combined on that team really seem to have. They'd have to figure out some roster juggling. How do they want to deploy their defense? Who's going to be DH? Who's going to be first base? Who's going to go over there and play third? What do they do with the rest of this lineup? But I would rather have the bat first and foremost. Once you get the bat, you figure out the rest later. And while they're not necessarily all going to be compatible at other positions that they're flexed out of, they need offense, pure and simple. This is a team that has Paul Skeens at the top of this rotation. But it's not all Paul Skeens. They have plenty of good pitching, good, young, controllable pitching, and this is their time to really compete. And that contract is more than palatable for that Pirates front office. That's just 2 teams. There are several others that make sense for a Ketel Marte trade. The question is, are you willing to give the pitching that they're asking for in return? We shall see. Prices have got to be exorbitantly high if both the Red Sox and Rays have decided to pass and still come off with some pretty decent trades themselves. Got to wonder what Marte's asking price is. We know it's 2 MLB-ready starting pitchers, but I wonder how much of an additional ask there is from the Diamondbacks' perspective. If it's just 2 MLB starters that are ready to go, I think there would be several teams that would be lining up right now. But there's got to be something that we're not seeing on the outside looking in at this situation about the ask from the Diamondbacks. Maybe they want somebody with some more established success in the major leagues. That could be a part of it, but who knows? I do think there is a very good chance he still gets moved, though. A player of his talent and that contract to be dangled like he has by the Diamondbacks after his return from the All-Star break and post-trade deadline, the rumblings around the organization, it's not necessarily they can't walk it back, but I do think it'd be highly irregular for them not to go ahead and get this deal done this far down the road. All right, Caleb, welcome in. If the Jays sign Bregman and Tucker, where does Barger end up? I think he'd end up going to the outfield. Santander might be the guy that's ultimately flipped at that point. I think Barger probably ends up in right more than anything else. Tucker, I think he'd probably end up in left if I had to guess. Bregman, I think, would be your third baseman at that point. Anthony, welcome in. Upside, what do you think as the delay on the trade market for both Sandy and Edward from Miami? I think most of it was held up in the starting pitcher market for Michael King. Now that he is off the board, I do think we're going to see some of those arms come off. And the trades, I do think, will begin to flow once we get the rest of that middle-class starting pitcher off the market. Ranger Suarez, I think, has got to go first. Zach Gallen, I think, is going to have to sign first. And then you'll get some of those trades. Now, if I had to guess which of those 2 pitchers gets traded before the other one, I think Cabrera, he's got a higher price on him. And I think more teams are going to be interested in him due to his success and control. Meanwhile, Sandy Alcantara, if a team is looking for proven success, the ability to be a Cy Young, maybe he's their preferred starting pitcher out of those 2 because the acquisition cost on him is going to be a little bit less than it would be for Cabrera. Upside, has the World Baseball Classic roster for the United States been completed yet? As far as the complete rosters, I don't remember if they've completed them yet. I'm sure there's always going to be some changes as we get closer and closer to the actual WBC with guys having ailments as they go up to the roster. So I don't think any of these rosters will be completely done until we're actually at it. And even during the event, we saw last year, pitchers would throw 1 or 2 innings in the entire thing and then go back to their home ball clubs. But very rarely would you see pitchers pitchers specifically stay for the entire thing. We do see the roster change quite a bit. Twist, how many former Mets did the Yankees get also? I'll agree with you there. There has been some back and forth between the 2 clubs, but predominantly the Yankees, as of late, are seeing a lot of their talent go back to the Mets, specifically their manager now, a couple of bullpen arms. You look Dylan Betances in the past as well. This isn't just a one-time thing. But I would say that the Yankees back in the day, while they were the evil empire back then, according when all the other teams were viewing them as we view the Dodgers now, they were viewed as the team that was the pinnacle of the entire sport. And I still think the Yankees are great, but I think they've certainly slipped down their pedestal just a little bit here. They haven't necessarily won at the clip that we have come to expect from the Yankees. I mean, they're not in the World Series every other year. They certainly are a good team. They certainly are a team worthy of being in the postseason every year, it seems like. But they haven't necessarily accomplished their goal of winning World Series. There's a phrase in sports anyway that Titletown USA, or we compete for championships. We don't count division winners. We compete for championships. We don't count appearances in the playoffs. The Yankees are not a team that necessarily counts their success by the number of division championships they win. They're not a team that counts their success based off of the number of World Series they reach but don't win. They count their success off of the number of times they win the whole thing. They win the World Series. They're not counting they're not counting championships based off of who won the trade deadline or who signed the biggest free agent. And I think that's where things have really changed for the Yankees as of late. They haven't had that same level of success. So we'll see what they do going forward. But the Yankees certainly aren't at that level anymore. Hal Steinbrenner is not George. I do think he's a good owner, but I do think he's more fiscally responsible than George was in his day. I would say that the financial arrangements around other teams have also improved quite a bit from when the Yankees were the best, most well-funded team in the entire league. Now you look at the Dodgers; they're obviously the most well-funded organization. The Ohtani deal alone has been worth, I don't know what, billions at this point to them. We're looking at all the money that just Ohtani brings in, and then all the TV revenue. According to several different people out there, they say the best TV deal in the country is with the Dodgers. And you'd have to argue that the national TV money that we're seeing come in is at least aided and benefited by the Dodgers being as good as they are and the international appeal of Ohtani and all the international stars that are coming over. But it's not just the Dodgers driving this. The Mets also have a lot more money than they ever have in their past. Steve Cohen has a lot more deeper pockets than the Wilpons or any one of the previous owners at that point. The Braves have been seen as kind of where we at least can see the books of the Atlanta Braves, and they're saying they're going to be a top 5 payroll this offseason. Well, back in the day, that wouldn't have been heard of as far as being in the same class as the Yankees as far as spending. The Phillies have already spent their money as well. So this is certainly a really different day and age for baseball. The Yankees are still right there. They've kind of adapted to the times to a certain extent, but there's more work to do. I think Yankees front office and Yankees fans would agree with me that while they haven't necessarily won the World Series, the success is still there. But the goal is still the same, to win the World Series, and we'll see if they can get it done. All right, let's keep it going here. Thoughts on Murakami? I told you guys, as far as Murakami, nobody really knew what was going on with him. Didn't have necessarily the social media following that Yamamoto or Sasaki did when they came over, or Ohtani. There wasn't, hey, he visited our ballpark today. There was nobody really doing that kind of posting for whatever the reason, how he wanted to handle it, if he wanted the agent to do it. But ultimately, it looks like he's just going to finalize that deal with the White Sox. Remember, has to be signed on the dotted line by Monday at 5 Eastern time. That obviously will get done. Told you guys this deal would get done, or at least announced anyway, as far as which team is going to on Saturday. Pretty much happened as we expected. They're going to dot the I's, cross the T's today, and I'm sure they'll have the introductory press conference early next week. The Yankees' last 3 players signed in free agency right now are former Mets. Well, how do I put this? I'm not trying to pile on the Yankees because I do think they're still a good team. But when you look at the players that are coming over from the Yankees versus the players that are coming over from the Mets, I would argue the talent going out is greater than the talent coming in if I'm a Yankees fan. I would rather have Soto. I would rather have Luke Weaver still in my bullpen right now. And that's, of course, the recency, of course. But I'm just saying that the more talent that you're seeing going out from the Yankees is troubling to me as far as the inability to replace the same talent with better players. Like I said, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, hey, once you want to leave the Yankees or it's more the Yankees are done with you, you're not producing at a certain level, bye. We don't need to worry about you. You can go sign with the Mets for a big lucrative deal that we would never offer you as the Yankees. But we target this player, and we're going to go ahead and throw the money at him. He's going to sign because it's the money. We're the Yankees, and nobody else can offer him that kind of money. And it's, heck, we're the Yankees. You can retire here, be a career Yankee at that point. You know, the draw of being a Yankee was far greater at that point because you had more money to be able to spend than all the other owners. And baseball, the business of baseball has really changed around them. And while they've adapted, I would say that there's still more work to do. Brian Cashman, I think, is not completely adapted to the times, which is part of the issue I have with the way he's constructed their roster. Kind of power heavy more than anything else. Versatility has kind of gone by the wayside. There's a couple of players like Caballero, I think they acquired last season at the trade deadline. I thought was a really nice move for him, out of character for the players that Cashman just typically does bring in. Kind of with platoon options at certain points. We've seen him do the platoon before, but versatility has not been a forte of the Yankees in recent years. You look at the trade for Stanton, they were trying to take advantage of a money situation from the Miami Marlins. And of course, that's been years ago now, but this has been the history of Brian Cashman, taking care of the Alex Rodriguez trade with the Texas Rangers even further back. You look at the team now, Joey Gallo brought in, again, seen as a five-tool player when he was in Texas, but the primary tool he offered was power. His time with the Yankees could not have gone worse. Hopefully he gets a minor league deal somewhere this offseason as a pitcher now. But one could argue that deal, really kind of took away some of the depth of the Yankees organization. They did a nice job replacing it. But the greater point here on the Yankees is that, while they're a good team, while they're certainly staying relevant, while they're certainly far more successful than the Cowboys have certainly been in the last 30 years, that they haven't necessarily lived up to the lofty standards they had set for themselves. It's not me who set those standards. It's not you as a fan. It's the Yankees themselves who said, hey, World Series or bust. We don't care about these division championships. We don't care about getting to the World Series. It's about winning the thing, and we'll see how things ultimately finish out for the Yankees. All right, let's keep it going here. Got quite a few comments that were there. When does Okamoto have to sign? I'll have to look up the specific day, but it's fairly close here. If I remember correctly, it's right around New Year's. So we got about another week for Okamoto. Any Rangers rumors, Harley? Still pretty much, mum's the word from that front office. They don't really let much out. That's why we talked about the two beat reporters, Evan Grant and Jeff Wilson, different sources or different publications that they work for anyway, that are having a tough time getting a good read on where this team is looking for improvements. I do think they are hearing some things that are fairly accurate, but by and large, the bigger moves that we see them doing, they don't really have a clue until they finally come down the pike. Could they speculate that they're interested in these players? Absolutely. Just like this year, they could be interested in Luis Ariz. Well, A plus B equals C. I mean, this one's fairly easy. Let's connect the dots. Skip Schumacher comes in. They want to change their offensive philosophy as far as being more of a contact-driven team. Hey, you know who's a great contact hitter that used to play for Skip Schumacher? Luis Ariz. Is he manageable, a cost that's going to be manageable for the Rangers to bring him in? Absolutely. So, kind of connect the dots here, but outside of that, we aren't really hearing anything outside of, hey, they have interest in starting pitching. We've heard them throw, darts at the board. Dylan Cease at one point. Right now, the flavor of the month is Zach Gallen. If they don't bring in Zach Gallen, I already started to hear rumblings about Ranger Suarez. So I'm curious to see which pitcher they do go for. I do think they will add one of some significance. I don't think it's going to be a guy that's on the cheap, like a 1 year, $5 million signing that's going to be your number 4 starter on opening day. But I do think they're going to spend pretty heavily at that position for at least a shorter term contract. A 2-year, $40 million deal like we saw with Merrill Kelly. I think it's kind of your baseline. I think your high end is probably going to be like 4 years, $100 million for a Zach Gallen type pitcher. Something in that range is what I would expect. And then as far as the offense goes, could they of course sign Luis Ariz? Absolutely. I do think they're going to have to figure out something from a position standpoint in order to create roster flexibility if they do bring him in. Maybe moving on from Jock Peterson if they can find a way to offload his salary, even a couple $1 million to another ball club. If you're saying to the Pittsburgh Pirates, hey, we'll give you, literally hand you Jock Peterson. All you have to do is pick up $2 million. We'll pay the remaining $16+ million on his contract, and you give us a rookie ball pitcher, 17-year-old, and we'll call it even. That's something I could see both sides, agreeing to, because at that point, $2 million is a drop in the bucket, even for a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, who especially in a year where the CBA is coming up, spending a little bit more would look better in the eyes of the Players Association, that they're at least willing to spend a little bit more in payroll. Chris, any Cubs updates? Kind of along the same lines with Eugenio Suarez and the Alex Bregman news. that if they are really that interested in bringing in Alex Bregman, I would kind of put some cold water on that one. It sounds less and less likely that he's going to end up there. Not that I thought he would ultimately go there in the end, but I would put a heavy dose of cold water on that one. So that leads me to the starting pitcher, Imai. So the finalists, quote unquote, for Imai were the Yankees and Cubs as of the end of last week. I still view that pretty much the same thing there. I think both teams still have a legitimate chance to get it done. I think there are other teams that are still going to be in the mix here. You know, the Phillies fans really are interested in bringing him in. I'm not sure how far the Phillies front office is along those lines, but with Ranger Suarez still being their own free agent that they were trying to bring in, or bring back anyway, and of course JT Realmuto, they have a lot of irons in the fire that they could still kind of round out their roster with. But the two teams that were mentioned as the favorites for him, Cubs and Yankees, still pretty much in the same boat there. Is Cashman done? I thought he should have been done before they brought back Aaron Judge a few years ago. I thought that was the time to make the move. He had just been off of one of the worst trades he had done in his tenure, trading for Joey Gallo at that time. That trade was abysmal for him. Had been called out in the media by several former Yankees about his inability to get off of the power bat, the one specific tool that he had continued to look for years and years and years. Bringing in the trade for Josh Donaldson as well, instead of bringing in Carlos Correa or a Corey Seager type player. Obviously time heals all wounds if you start winning, and he's done a little bit better. I don't give him credit for bringing back Aaron Judge. I give that credit to Hal Steinbrenner because it was he who convinced him to sign. Ultimately, Brian Cashman had him sign on the dotted line, but it was Hal who ultimately got him back to the table with the Yankees. And Aaron Judge was the one who really kind of initiated that final talk there. He was pretty much gone to the Giants. He liked the deal with them, but just said, hey, I like being a Yankee. The reason I want to retire a Yankee. And, found a way to find some common ground with the owner, Hal Steinbrenner. Kind of a special case, obviously. But, again, I don't give that win to Brian Cashman. Since then, he has done a better job, I would say, since the Joey Gallo trade of at least improving this roster. Loved what he did after losing Juan Soto last year. Obviously, would prefer to have Juan Soto, but I really liked what he did as far as trying to identify several different holes on this roster and plug them. Max Fried, stroke of genius last year. Luke Weaver is very good for them. Devin Williams trade obviously didn't work out the way they'd hoped. First base, I think they got better than expected production out of Paul Goldschmidt. But third base, the trade for Ryan McMahon didn't go quite as well. That had been a long rumored deal that finally got done. Was not an expensive trade for them to make, but didn't really solve the problem for them over at third base. They had to bring in a platoon option with Ahmed Rosario coming in as well. Trent Grisham, the other player who was acquired along with Juan Soto in that trade, ultimately accepted the qualifying offer this offseason. So he certainly played better in the last year or so. So I'd say Cashman's done a better job as of late. But by no means do I think he's done, or by no means do I think he's not on the hot seat. I think this is a GM that's been there 20 plus years at this point now. I think he is the longest tenured by a mile now. And if they weren't going to move or make a move before the Aaron Judge decision, I just don't see them making a move anytime soon. Should they have? That's a conversation for another day. But right now, I think he's pretty safe there in New York. Ethan, Murakami only getting $34 million. Rangers paying Jock 2 for $40 is absolute joke by Texas. I'd rather have Murakami. Well, again, that's revisionist history as well. Murakami was not available last year. Rangers had to go out there and try to improve their lineup with whatever they thought they could. At the time, he was given a one-year deal with a player option for the second year, and they thought he had come off of a really nice year with Arizona, that he'd be worth that one-year deal and then opt out of that player option and try to get a longer-term deal in this year's free agent class. Obviously, the offense could not have gone worse for Jock Peterson this year. Looking back, as always, hindsight is 2020. I would have argued that signing a DH-only player was not the direction to go. You guys remember me talking about this last year, but the decision's been made. The die has been cast. Once he got off to that terrible start, you knew he was going to be locking in that deal. You're not getting off of that deal except for maybe a couple $1 million like the trade idea I mentioned with the Pirates or some other offense-lacking team that might hope they catch lightning in a bottle with Jock Peterson on a lottery ticket type of a thing. But outside of that, he's largely going to be stuck on this roster unless you just decide to cut him and lose him in free agency, which I'm sure Rangers fans would love to do, but owners don't like paying money to players who are no longer on their roster, and they certainly don't like signing paychecks over to a player playing for another team and finding some success with that team. So unless he's traded, I do not expect him to be outright released. It's just not going to happen. You don't see that unless there's an egregious situation from a character standpoint, a clubhouse issue, something along those lines. Look at Rendon is one of the more egregious ones in recent memory, and he's still there. They're trying to work out the contract details for a buyout, of course. And then, of course, you look at the Wander Franco situation. Those are extreme cases. I'd say kind of a similar situation right now would be Nick Castellanos or Josh Hamilton from years past, where poor performance really was what caused them to be released or going to be released in Nick Castellanos' case. I think it's just more of a roster crunch thing for the Phillies and just needing to move on. And I don't think the Rangers are nearly there after only the 1 year of the Jock Peterson experiment. If things are going poorly through the first month of the season anyway, and he's still struggling with those same numbers, even at a 210 average, there could be some calls for him to be released or sent down or whatever the case may be. At that point, I could see them moving on from him, but I think they're at least going to try it one more time into the breach unless they can find somebody to take on even a little bit of that salary. Upside, who makes this trade a 1-for-1? Marte for Cabrera. The Marlins make that trade all day. Marte has significantly better value. Anthony, I think Bo Bichette is going to sign with a team that is not Toronto. I'm about 100% certain on that one. There's very few free agents that I can say with absolute certainty that they're not going back to their original team. Bichette is probably the closest I am to saying that. I would say it's at least in the 95 percentile for me that he's going to land elsewhere. I think the fact that they're looking at both Tucker, Bregman, and to a lesser extent Bellinger and other top free agent targets as well kind of has the writing on the wall that they're looking to invest that money that could have been earmarked for Bichette in a different way. Now, could they circle back if they don't land one of these guys? Absolutely. But I think the die is cast here. This organization is ready to move on as far as defensively. Now, if they find a way to bring him back on this roster at a discounted rate, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have him and say, hey, welcome back, son of Toronto. Team up with your great friend, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and do it for the boys in Toronto. That would be the marketing campaign. The real answer would be, hey, you couldn't find the money you were looking for elsewhere, so you took our lesser money that you said you were not willing to sign before the trade deadline, and so, hey, welcome back. We're happy to pay you a smaller salary, and, go sit in the clubhouse, enjoy your money. We got you at the number we are comfortable with. I think that's pretty much the scenario that's going to happen if Bichette wants to go back to Toronto, or if he ends up back in Toronto. More likely than not, I would expect him to do very well in free agency through another destination. I think he's kind of the Trevor story of this offseason. We've mentioned that before, where the Red Sox took advantage of a great offseason of top-end shortstops that were out there. The last guy standing, the last guy that was still standing out there without a chair anyway when the music stopped was Trevor Story, and so he ended up signing with the Red Sox for 6 years, $144 million. Still a great payday. Has not even lived up to that contract. Had to play out of position as well. And I think that's the road we're likely headed down with Bo Bichette. Hopefully he finds a better landing spot and better production anyway than Story has with the Red Sox. Story had a nice year last year, at least a rebounding year with the Red Sox, but by and large, I think we can all agree that the Story deal didn't work out quite as well as the Red Sox had hoped for. All right, that's how they used to think. This current Yankees management don't think like that. I will say that they are at least adapting to certain trends in the game. I would not have seen them making a trade for like a player like Caballero at the trade deadline this year. I thought he was a really fantastic pickup. They didn't play him enough, in my opinion. Kind of bringing a different element to the game. But the Yankees are at least evolving. Might not be as fast or as quick in some areas as others would like. But for me, they're at least starting to show some changes here. But to me, they've had a lot more people leave, especially this offseason. It's still early. To me, that they need to solve some of these issues, the departures that they've had. The bullpen I'm a little bit worried about. I like the trade deadline acquisition of Bednar. I think that still solidifies the ninth for you. But I have a lot of questions about getting you from the 6th, 7th, and 8th to the 9th inning. What's your bridge there? I know Doval is going to be there in some form, but who else are you going to trot out there as your fireman like you did with Weaver last year? Those guys don't grow on trees. And then as far as your lineup, of course you have Aaron Judge to kind of really gloss over a lot of the issues in that Yankees lineup, but this offense really worked best when they had two elite anchors in that lineup. This year they had really nice years from Bellinger and Goldschmidt to kind of help soften the loss of Juan Soto. But you could certainly argue that both guys, when they were operating at their best, there was few lineups in the game that could really compete on the level that the Yankees lineup was able to with just those two guys in there. Those guys don't come around often, though. So that's why I say that you're going after a Cody Bellinger, bringing him back. is vital to this Yankees offseason. It's not done yet. Who knows where he goes? I still think Yankees are just as likely to sign him as the Mets. But I think it's very close. I do think he ends up in New York in one of those two spots. And I think it's going to be on the Yankees to try to win that bidding. Chris, do you think it's possible Zach Gallen did in fact sign with the Cubs, but because of his wedding and honeymoon, doesn't want it released until later? Absolutely. Stuff like that does happen in the game all the time. As far as like personal news getting in the way, or commitments outside of baseball, birth of a child, wedding, honeymoon, vacation. We saw that a lot last year. Vacations getting in the way of free agent destinations. But as far as Zach Gallen goes, I think he is still out there on the market, mainly because of the Michael King news just getting done at the end of last week. I think he gets done pretty early this week. I think Monday or Tuesday we could see a signing of Zach Gallen. Maybe it is the Cubs. Maybe they are just waiting for all that to get done. But I do think we get a Zach Gallen deal done before we get to the Christmas break here. OC, the Ohtani deal has given the Dodgers generational value. Absolutely. Got so many people in here. Let me scroll up here. Just bounced all the way to the bottom here. What about Granderson? He was arguably better as a Met than a Yankee. Yeah, I mean, Granderson was great as both of those, honestly. I do remember him more as a Yankee than I do the Met, though. So, to your point there have been some players going back the other way. But as of late, it's certainly started to tilt as far as top-end talent going the opposite direction. And I do think there is a way that the Yankees can still retain some really good talent coming in, obviously. They don't necessarily have to worry about the players going out if they bring in better talented players. But, it's a competitive market. The Yankees, 30 years ago didn't have as competitive a market for these top-end players. Now they do. They're having to adapt to the times, and I would say they've had some mixed results, would be a good way to put it. You think Bregman, Cody, Bo will sign after the new year? I know that we're going to get a signing of Alex Bregman after the new year. I can pretty much put money on it. If there was a site that I could, I probably would put it on there. But as far as Bellinger, I think he happens in the new year. Bo Bichette certainly happens in the new year. I think there's a good chance we get Kyle Tucker sometime in the next week. I was hoping we'd get the deal done before we get to Christmas. And the way he's rumored to at least be taking these visits, all of these were supposed to be done by Monday. So tomorrow, I think, might be one of his last reported free agent, shopping trips, at least going to check out the city, talk to the manager, listen to their sales pitch. That's why I thought that before Christmas we could get a deal done with Kyle Tucker. He may want to add teams to that. He may want to go revisit teams, those kinds of things. But I'm beginning to wonder if he takes a little bit after Christmas to get his deal done. I mean, he is probably the top free agent on this market. Curious to see, where he ultimately ends up, obviously. To me, I still think the Blue Jays are seen as the heavy favorite right now. Jeff Passan saying he'd basically be surprised if he didn't end up a member of the Blue Jays. I do think he's going to end up there. No matter what, there's always an upside. Sports Network. Welcome back, Hank. Appreciate you joining us once again. Really do appreciate you. Always brightening us up here in our chat here with it. God bless. Absolutely. Merry Christmas. Eric, you want Imai. I would too if I'm the Cubs. He's probably the best starter that you could reasonably achieve in free agency. They could, of course, go after Framber, but I think Imai might be their best option as far as top-end talent. Otherwise, I think they're going to have to go kind of mid-tier, starting pitcher shopping. We're talking, bargain basement, of course, the one-year deals for Verlander, Molly, players like that. Mid-tier would be kind of guys in the, Zach Gallen range who had a poor year but can be a number one if they get back to their level of success. Knowledge, it's weird Kyle Tucker coming back to Chicago went from a 1% to 20% recently. There may be something to look into there where he may have had the time of his life in the playoff run leading Chicago. I'll put it this way. Tucker was fantastic in the first couple of months of the season. Had his injury, had to play through his injury, was arguably the worst player in the game for about a month. Started to play a little bit better towards the end. I would say it's a mixed bag as far as his experience there in Chicago at best. Would I say that he's, completely against signing in Chicago? Absolutely not. I do think there's a good chance that if, the money was even, he might sign back in Chicago. I just don't think the money's even out there. I think the money is significantly bigger from other teams. I think the trade itself was a bit of an egregious mistake. Going all in last year was kind of a mistake by the Cubs front office, but they were trying to save their jobs. They got their contract extensions. They're good to go. They don't necessarily need to bring in Kyle Tucker now, so we'll see see what happens the rest of this offseason. But to me, the impetus last season should have been on starting pitching. We saw how they ran out of starting pitching on top of having the injury to Justin Steele. Now this offseason, same story. They still need more pitching. So do they finally address it? I think they will in at least one meaningful way. I'm hoping it's Imai. If I'm a Cubs fan, that's the player I really want. And then, whoever else they get this offseason I think would be gravy on top. But to me, starting pitcher, starting pitcher, starting pitcher is where it begins and ends for the Cubs this offseason. OC, what are the odds Tucker doesn't get a mega deal that he's looking for and ends up on a shorter-term, high AV deal? I actually think he's contemplating that. I think he's going to have both options on the table. If he wants the 10 or 11, 12-year deal worth $300 to $400 million, I think he's going to have that contract on the table from a team like the Blue Jays. If he wants a 3 to 4 year deal in the $45 to $50 million average annual value range, I think he's going to have that on the table from a team like the Dodgers. If they really want to put it out there, I think they will. I think there'll be other teams that at least have interest as well. But for me, I think he's going to end up going with the longer-term certainty. So, even though he may get 4 years, $200 million from the Dodgers, if he can get 10 years, $400 million from the Blue Jays, he might just take that, certainty of getting that $400 million. Who's to say that the injury that he had this year doesn't end up derailing some of his future success, causing him issues down the road? Not saying this injury is going to linger or anything, but I'm just saying maybe the injury might scare him into taking the longer payroll or the longer term commitment from a team to lock up that generational money. Touchdown Patriots, good. I got the Patriots tonight. I'm really hoping Drake May has a game, but I heard Travion Henderson went out. I was hoping he had a nice game today too, but obviously that's not going to happen for me. Oh well. I think Imai and the Cubs is 25%. Hearing the Cubs are final two, so 50%. I would say, as far as if you wanted to put a percentage on it for Imai to the Cubs, I'm not going to say 50% because while I think there are two favorites for him, I think those are just the two that have kind of distinguished themselves from the other teams. While I still think there's probably a range of 5 teams that are still kind of circling here as well, and maybe another 2 that don't have a realistic chance, but are at least watching how things unfold. As far as the chances of him going to the Cubs, I'd say probably in the 35 to 40% chance. I'd probably say the chances the Yankees are very similar, and then the rest of the teams kind of divvy up the remaining amount. So 5% here, 5% there, but I'd still say the most likely teams are Cubs and Yankees. Not an overwhelming favorite by any means. Bo Yankee, that would be an interesting move. I have heard that from fans more than anything else. I did hear a couple of different sources like John Heyman, and insiders anyway, like John Heyman, basically saying that it would be an interesting fallback option for them as kind of a Bo Bichette or a Cody Bellinger bat in the middle of that lineup replacement. Doesn't really make sense from a positional value standpoint. Where are you going to play Bo at that point? Do you play him at short? What do you do with Volpe? Do you play him at second? What do you do with Jazz? Do you move Jazz to the outfield? Do you trade Jazz? There has been conversation about a Jazz Chisholm trade, so maybe there's where that smoke, there's fire kind of a thing. They're trying to move Jazz before they sign Bo. I doubt that's the case, but that would at least be somewhat logical to me. But Bo to the Yankees would be an interesting move. Let me check on X just see if anything is happening at the moment. The Drake May deep ball. And of course it loads right in the middle of it. Who caught that? Williams. Nice. His first 300 passing game. Very nice. Okay. Let's check out our notifications, just see if anything else is happening at the moment. We'll get into some of the NBA talk here in just a minute as well. All right. Let's keep it going, try to catch up on these chats, and then we'll get into some of the other news items of the day as well. Andrew, what do you think of the Carolina Panthers winning their division? What do you think of the Eagles going for 2 at the end of the game? Eagles at least get into the postseason. I don't really follow too much as far as the game flow of the Eagles right now. To me, their play calling is completely mystifying as far as what they're doing with Jalen Hurts. Am I happy that they finally got in and kind of ended the Cowboys season? Even as a Cowboys fan, yes. I want the better draft pick at this point. As you can see, I got Tankathon up on my screen, not just for the Mavericks, but also for the Cowboys. When your team is not winning the Super Bowl, when it's not going to the NBA Finals, when you're not in the World Series, those kinds of things. If you're not in those conversations, then it should all be about getting to the bottom here. And you never want your franchise to be giving up on a season. You always want to see them try hard. Players will always try hard, no matter how the game is going for them or how their record looks. They'll always try to win games. It's franchises that usually try to position themselves in ways that give them the best chances at those picks. And I think We're going to see that now from the Mavericks on the NBA side, and the same thing with the Cowboys, where we're going to likely see Joe Milton as the quarterback there. But as far as your Panthers winning their division, really excited for them because this is a quarterback that was not expected to succeed after the tumultuous first year he had. Smaller, undersized quarterback, really struggled in his first year. You could already see the vultures circling as far as how quickly are they going to move on from Bryce Young. They brought in Andy Dalton. They replaced him in the starting lineup for a couple of games there, let Dalton start, and Dalton was decent, but then they went back to Bryce Young, and since then he's been very good. Would I say he's top 10 quarterback in the league good? No, but I would say he's certainly better than what they've been working with beforehand. So good times for the Panthers ahead. Hopefully they're able to retain Rico Dowdle in the offseason. Are they going to make noise going to the Super Bowl? Probably not, but a good, nice stride forward here for the Carolina Panthers. Very good season overall. And what's going on with the Buccaneers? Baker Mayfield looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the league for the first 6 or 7 weeks, and then now just can't hit in a wide open receiver. Does he got the yips or something? I don't know. Maybe he's got an injury that he's playing through. We'll see what the after action is for the Buccaneers after the season. But for me, the injuries at the wide receiver room really allowed Egbuka to really have a nice rookie year. Do they allow Mike Evans to walk in free agency now that they have 2 top-end receivers still in Godwin and Egbuka, and then they still have McMillan that I think is a really good receiver? They've got a really nice receiver room even without Mike Evans. Do they allow him to walk in free agency, or do they tag him and then trade him? Something to consider. Same thing for the Cowboys and George Pickens, which is why I think they're going to try to force-feed him the ball the final couple of weeks of the season to try to inflate his stats a little bit, because for me, I want another first-round pick, and I think if Pickens continues on the rate that he was up until the last few games, I think he could very well net a first-round pick via trade, just like they did with Micah Parsons this year. I think they could revisit that same well again with Pickens, but we'll see. Yankees are not going to spend the money for Bo. I think you're probably right on that one. I think they would prefer to spend the money on Imai. I think they'd prefer to spend the money on Bellinger. I haven't heard their name too much recently with Kyle Tucker, but I think Bellinger is probably the most likely that they're going to go for. But would I say that they're not going to spend it on Bo? No, I think if he's the guy that's for them and they're able to negotiate a deal that's to their liking, I think they could get that deal done as well. Knowledge, Cubs fan, it's a lifelong thing. Wilson Contreras won the World Series catching with David Ross for us, hit big home runs. I'll never forget that, even if it was the end of his Cubs tenure and the beginning of his Cardinals tenure was tumultuous, to say the least. His getting kicked out from behind the plate for a week and then given back the position after a couple more weeks anyway, being forced into the DH role and then back into catching and then over to first base permanently now, and then finally on his way to Boston. At least that saga is over now. I think he's going to fit very well in that lineup. Really love his possibility with that Green Monster. Do I think it's going to be as impactful as Bregman was in the first half? No, but I think it's better than what he had at first base going into the season. But only $8 million picked up by the Cardinals was a little bit surprising for me. Arif, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. What about Barger being traded for pieces? Hell no, I ain't doing that if I'm the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm keeping Barger. He's the young player on this team. I'm kind of building around all these big salaries. I need some good, young, talented players to still be able to put up really good numbers around these guys, because while they are aircraft carriers, and you could pretty much put me and you around them and be able to at least still field a good team, I want some good, young, cheap talent. I'm trying to win a World Series. I ain't trying to just parcel it out. Even though I'm bringing in this, top-end talent, I'm not willing to, lose successful players at wherever I'm able to find them on my team. While other pieces may help you in certain respects, as far as a bullpen arm here or there, I want Barger in that lineup. I think he's going to be a difference maker for them going forward. Do you think Bo can go to the Diamondbacks if Marte is moved for Bregman, or is moved or Bregman? If Marte is moved, that was the talk around Bregman possibly going there. I think that would have to be the caveat there as well. If Marte does get moved, which I do think he is going to get moved still, maybe if they don't get Bregman, then they could turn to Bo Bichette. Less likely, I would say. I think they'd prefer to hold on to their money at that point. But I think Bregman is kind of a special case for them if they were able to bring him in with the loss of Marte. Let's see here. But Wilson Contreras has been an automatic. Cardinals are going to be bad. That's what he brought to the Cardinals locker room. Are there issues around Contreras? Absolutely. Can teams deal with those? I believe they can. Do I think is still a winning player in the right situation? I do. I think he can still be a nice player. Um, do I think the Cardinals are going to be bad as a bigger question next year? I think they were hoping to be a 1 year retooling team. I think that I think that is out the window now. I do think that for, Sarah, your favorite team, is probably going to be having to retool slash rebuild this year, which is something we have not really seen out of the Cardinals in back to back years in what, 40 years now, 50 years since the last time they were really in this shape, where they don't really have a chance or a pathway to get to the World Series or at least to consistent contention in the postseason or a wild card spot. Could they hang around if everything breaks right? Sure, every team could pretty much do that, but with the exception of probably the Rockies. But um, the Cardinals need pitching more than anything else. They did a nice job bringing in some arms from Boston in both of these deals. I think the work is still there to do, though, with Arenado. They need to bring in more as far as free agent starting pitching as well to kind of round out this thing. I think they will do that. But are they on the level with the Dodgers? Hell no, nobody is. Are they even on the level with the Brewers in the division? No, not a chance. Are they on the level with a team like the Cubs, the Reds? Probably not. I'd say Pittsburgh with their pitching is probably in a better chance or a better position going forward for at least the next 2 years than the Cardinals are. I'd say the Cardinals are better offensively, but certainly from a pitching side, Pittsburgh has you in spades. It's just going to be a tough couple of years, I think, going forward here for the Cardinals. Worse than what they're used to. So, Cardinals fans, it's been a nice run, but now you're going to have to experience what almost every other fan base outside of probably the Yankees has really gone through, and that's going to be a rebuilding phase. And good luck to them. I think they'll be able to solve it, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. So just remember to be patient. Try not to look necessarily at the win-loss, but look at the day-to-day, the growth of the players more than anything else. What's going on in your minor leagues? What's the draft looking like? International spending. Is your team on their P's and Q's when it comes to international free agents? That's going to have to be the path forward now for the Cardinals, as it should have already been. But now that emphasis could not be greater because you're not good on the major league side right now. So when you're not very good on the major league side, you better make sure everything else in your process is going well. If you're not drafting right, if you're overvaluing certain positions, first base in the draft, if you're not developing talent that you do draft, and they're just petering out in high A ball or double A and not even making it to the big leagues, that's a bigger problem. And so that's where the focus is going to have to be for the Cardinals, at least this year, and we'll see how their rebuild, retool goes the rest of the way. All right, Bo will go to the Yankees. I think there's a chance he could go there. Would I put the chance very high? No. But would I put it less than probably 10%? I would. I think there's a good chance that he ends up elsewhere, but I would not rule out the possibility of the Yankees. Contreras is going to get drug off the field after being thrown out. Oh, boy. Let's see here. Got a few other comments. Try to catch up on a few more of these. Try to scroll back up because my thing jumps every now and again. Tracy, welcome in. I have to think that the Yankees have a stealth move coming. I don't necessarily think it's stealthy. I just think that they're still looking at bigger moves. Bellinger, I think, is probably their number one target on the position player side right now. And Imai probably on the pitching side. I think that's where their focus is. If they don't get those, then I think they go to their option number 2, which could be anything from a Bo Bichette to a Paul Goldschmidt to a Kyle Tucker to Okamoto. Lots of irons could be in the fire for the Yankees as far as filling those holes. Same day, White Sox signed Murakami. Boston trades for Wilson Contreras. Murakami news was yesterday, late yesterday anyway. Contreras was today. Andrew, no, I think Boston is out on Marte. Could the Phillies be in on Zach Gallen if they don't sign Suarez? I think that's a possibility. It'd be kind of a look-alike contest a little bit between between Nola and Gallen if they signed him, but it could be an interesting move for them. I still would prefer Suarez more than anything else, though. Let's see here. I think Zach Gallen's market won't peak until Imai signs. Possibly. I think Imai obviously has a deadline for his negotiations, but I think that he's in that same class along with Michael King that really got the ball rolling, I think, for some of these starting pitchers. I do think Imai is going to sign here in the next week or so. I think Gallen is going to be in that same window. I thought he would have signed sometime before Christmas. Right now, I think he's going to be right around that Christmas window, either a day or two before, which could be tomorrow or Tuesday, or maybe a couple days after. But I don't think it's going to take very much longer, if at all, after that. January 2nd, I do believe that is the day for Imai. When does Imani have to sign? But that is the day I kind of think it is. Dodger, welcome in. Appreciate you coming back and seeing us. Same as Imai is holding up the starting pitcher market a bit. Bregman, Tucker, Bichette are going to hold up the market. I doubt that. There are very few players in that type of market right now. There are more, decent major league players that are going to be coming off the board a lot quicker. These teams can still sign those players, and the big market teams that are still in the running for those players that you mentioned, the Bichettes of the world, the Bregmans of the world, they're still going to have the money for those big organizational changes. Now, they might not go after certain players because they're interested in them in those players, but there's still going to be a good run on position players if those guys decide to take their time. Say if we get to the middle of January and all three of those guys are still on the board, I would not be surprised if the rest of the market has kind of moved on by and at least try to get some of their business done. I don't think every player or most of them are even going to wait to get those guys signed. If they decide to take their time, which is within their right, I still think the market's going to move on and be just fine without them. Let's see here. Could Baltimore be in on Zach Gallen? I thought they should be. With the addition of Shane Baz, I still think they should be. Same thing with Framber Valdez. To a lesser extent, I've heard them recently with Framber Valdez. I think that would be the guy I'd still be trying to get. Same thing with the Mets. He's the top guy to me as far as proven guy on the market that I would go after as far as an ace type of a pitcher. Question marks as far as his mentality, throwing at a catcher, of course. But I think those concerns will kind of take care of themselves if they haven't already. And I think he's going to do very well in free agency. Now, as far as the other starting pitchers, Imai, Gallen, and others, and then, of course, Cabrera on the trade market, I think those are kind of that next tier that's going to come off after Valdez. God bless you. Pray. Absolutely. Welcome in. Knowledge. Appreciate you coming back and seeing us. Chris, do you think Nico Horner, what do you think Nico Horner would bring back from Texas? Shaw to second, sign Eugenio for third. For 1 year of Nico, maybe like a former top 100 pitcher like Rosario. His value is, I believe, around 6.9. Horner, I believe, is around 11, if I remember correctly. So maybe you could get Rosario and maybe a smaller piece, A-ball prospect, offensive piece, Dylan Dreiling or something like that. Is it going to be a needle-moving trade? No. Dodger, Boston is reaching again with Contreras. Not a bad player, but not in a good stage of his career. True, but it's also a short-term deal. This reminds me kind of towards the end of the Josh Donaldson's career when he was sent from the Twins to the Yankees. Do I think this is the right move for the Red Sox? I think there are other options that they need to go after, and I still think they have the ability to do so. But I think solving first base for this type of money, I think, is palatable for the Red Sox front office and allows them to kind of not have to spend big money at that position long term if they were after like a Bellinger. Not that they were in the market for a Bellinger, but from having to avoid the fan base clamoring for one. Because, Devers now gone. They were going to have to, I'm sure the fan base eventually would come around saying, hey, you saved the money on Devers. When are you going to spend it? How are you going to spend it? And that would be the kind of the cry you'd hear. Now with Contreras over there at first base, I think that at least will quiet some of the rumors for a bigger price player over there at first base. Not that he's going to, be Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but that you've already spent the money at first base. It's on a shorter-term deal, and I do think he'll have greater success there in Boston than he did in St. Louis. 100% him and PCA started out as MVP candidates. PCA was great last year in the first half. Kind of didn't have a great second half from what I remember, but his first half was otherworldly. He looked like top 10 player in the sport good. Hopefully he can continue to be that type of a player for the Cubs going forward. I don't think the Tucker trade was a mistake because we got to see the team can win with a great bat to protect in the lineup. Playoff runs definitely develop players, and they needed that. To a certain extent, I'll agree with you that developing young players and getting them some postseason experience or pennant race type of competition is really valuable for teams. That's what the Mavericks are trying to do with Cooper Flagg right now. That's what they did with Luka when he was a rookie as well. Just trying to get and compete at that level. Those types of reps are invaluable. You can't recreate them. You can't simulate them in practice. You can't simulate them in April. And so just by trying to win allows them to kind of grow. Now I would argue that they still had good veterans on this roster. Were they of the caliber of Kyle Tucker? No. I would argue that having Paredes there, that having Ian Happ there, that having Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, those are some really good veterans that you can count on that have been in those situations before to a certain extent. But, I still think you could have had the growth and still been able to, not have to execute the trade to be able to get to be able to continue your progression. I just think that the thought process as far as going all in was wrong. I don't think there was necessarily the thought process going into this as primary reason we're doing this is to develop our young players. That wasn't the thought process when they made the deal. The thought process was let's win. Side benefit, we develop our young players in a competitive environment. That does help you going forward. I'll give you that one. Dodgers. The problem with Tucker is that if he takes a short-term deal with the CBA changes, he might not make what he could get on a 10-year deal. True, but I don't think there will be necessarily limits on term in the new CBA. I'm sure that the salary cap conversation is going to take over quite a bit of next offseason. I'm sure that we'll talk a lot about deferred money. We'll talk about contract length. We'll talk about the bottom of the market teams. We'll talk about small market teams. We'll talk about the big spenders, all of those kinds of things. But one thing I think we'll probably not talk about too much is limitations on contract length. Now, as far as how that money is spent during that contract, I think will absolutely be up for discussion, and that deferred money, I think that loophole will be closed down quite a bit, if not completely eliminated. Now the same Cubs with Suarez and Imai can make a run, in my opinion, because the team had last year where they're all developed. Well, I would argue that you're not necessarily all in if you make those additions. Imai, to me, is not a one-year signing. Imai should be a 5-6 year contract, at least a 4-year deal. Whereas Tucker was a 1-year addition that maybe you could convince him to stay. But we already knew in his time with the Houston Astros that he was going to free agency. He told the Astros that over and over and over again. He wanted to see what free agency was like and see what it's worth on the open market. Cubs were cognizant of that when they made the trade. They were comfortable with the risk of losing him in free agency for what they gave up for him. And I'll give them credit. They were comfortable with that. And they still got some really nice pieces going forward. But I just think that the thought process going into the trade didn't make sense to me. You were not one player away from winning a World Series. Were you one player away from being competitive and possibly getting to a world or getting to an NLCS or something along those lines? Sure, but I don't think you're necessarily getting to a World Series last year. So while it was a successful year, I would argue for the Cubs, especially in their development on the minor league side, especially with Cassie. I think it's time to kind of move that outfield forward with that next group of outfielders. The pitching was still the need last year. They didn't really address it. They suffered for it during the season. We saw that. And now it's time to go ahead and solve those issues. They have bigger issues on the pitching side than the offensive side, which while Imai and Suarez, or I should say Suarez would be a nice option, Imai would be my target there. Suarez would be my target there. Long-term starting pitching would be my target if I'm the Cubs front office. Why do you want Nico Hoerner gone from the Cubs? I don't want Nico Hoerner gone from the Cubs. I think he's still pretty good there. The only reason I would move him is if I didn't have the room. The Yankees doing... Murakami, left-hand power, would have been insane in that stadium. White Sox, you got to credit. True, I will give them credit. They did a nice job kind of scooping up a player most of the industry was interested in. The money is a good deal for them. Short-term deal kind of fits in their price range as well. And he kind of gets to grow with that young core, kind of in that same age group. So I do like the deal quite a bit for the White Sox. I think if Bichette and the Mets keep their fan, I think if anything, Bichette to the Mets to keep the fan base alive. Again, it's a player that would be interesting for them to have. Probably play over there at third base, slightly out of position. Would be another bat in that lineup and at least give them some length. Still have my questions about their process getting here, but at least it'd be another bat to protect Soto, Lindor in that lineup. Can we stop saying Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback? I'm not prepared to say that yet. I didn't think he was a very good quarterback when he was with the Browns, but he won a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say it was Tim Tebow back there, but I would say that he developed a ton in his time after Cleveland. I'd say the Rams really kind of opened up his eyes to what he could be and what the position demanded of him. And I think that time with McVay was really valuable to him. And then, of course, following up Tom Brady, no expectations, really good Super Bowl quality roster, and they were able to surprise some people at how good he was with a very good team around him, much like we saw in the Cleveland days. And it looked like he was a much more accurate quarterback than he had been with Cleveland. That's why his drop-off over the last 5 or 6 games has been really surprising to me. That's why I'm wondering if there's a real issue injury-wise with Baker, because if there's not, I got to wonder about his ability to complete passes, let alone be a starting quarterback in the league at this point. You don't want Nico gone. I actually think the smart trade was moving Happ and his 1-year $20, extend Suzuki. Wow, that's interesting. People were not saying that about Suzuki a couple of years ago, or I should say last year. Suzuki I thought was a nice piece for them, and I'm glad they hung on to him. Nico Shaw has proven nothing and holds insane trade value. I would say Shaw was a nice player for you guys last year, but again, rookie campaign. Getting adjusted to the major league schedule, getting adjusted to the pitching, getting adjusted to the actual pace of the game, all those things take time. And I think Shaw will actually play much better in year two. Now, as far as moving on from Nico, I don't necessarily want Nico gone, but I'm not necessarily looking to move on from the other guys either. I still think they have a good enough roster as currently constructed to where even if they didn't sign Suarez or any other offensive pieces, I think they'd be just fine with the roster that they have. Again, the issues that they have are on the pitching side. That's where their money should be spent. I see the White Sox still trying to trade Robert Jr. for starting pitching. If somebody could give him a bag of magic beans at this point for Robert Suarez, or excuse me, not Robert Suarez, but for Luis Robert, they should try to get that deal done. It's been talked about for far too long. Just needs a change of scenery at this point. I think they're going to get a nice offer in return for him, better than what they probably should get. And I think a team's going to try to, think there's a little bit less money on the deal, a little less pressure on him to instantly produce when they do acquire him, where it might be more palatable for a front office to bring him in. And the trade cost is not going to be very high either, but the return might be better than what it would have been, say, a year ago, due to the contract and the poor performance and the injury issues, all kind of, all at the same time. So we'll see where he goes. I do think he gets dealt somewhere. I think this is finally the offseason for it, just a matter of when. Unlikely, but if Cubs sign Imai and then trade Shaw, another one of the top 100 prospects for Skubal with Horton, Steele coming back, Boyd, Tyone, Shota, one or two, but that'd be a very interesting situation. There's no way you're getting Skubal, that's for sure. I do like the idea of bringing in Imai, obviously. I just don't think Skubal's going to move. I know that industry out there thinks that there's real value in trading Skubal now, 1 year versus 18 years of control of 3 different prospects, high value assets. I mean, I would prefer to make that move if I didn't have faith in my front office being able to keep him after the season. I think there's every reason to believe that the Tigers should and can retain Tarik Skubal this offseason. I think they have the money to do it. It's just a matter of how much do other teams offer. I think teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and Mets and everybody else is going to offer a king's ransom. But I still think the Tigers can afford it. It's just a matter of, how many years does he end up getting, and what other opportunities does it? How many other opportunities does it keep the Tigers from getting to because the money they would spend on Skubal would be my only detractors there. But I do think there's a really good chance they keep him, and I've got to try. I mean, this is not the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes where you knew he was leaving, there was no way he was coming back, and yet you doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down, and basically damaged your organization for 5-10 years as a result of how you handled the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes out there in L.A. This is not that. This is still a very different situation where I still think he could end up back in Detroit with the success that they've had recently, but also the fact that they can still give him a very comparable contract and still be able to compete for postseason success in Detroit just fine. The Angels, meanwhile, were not able to offer those same things to Shohei Ohtani. Welcome in, Jose. Appreciate you joining us once again. I'd like a much younger and richer owner of the Phillies. I'm growing tired of this current ownership. Well, you got a GM right now, well, I should say President of Baseball Ops anyway, in Dombrowski, who's very willing to go out there and make the big move and try to help you guys win a World Series. Has it worked to the level of the Dodgers? Absolutely not. Have they choked at times in the postseason? Absolutely. The year that the Rangers won the World Series, to me, that was the year the Phillies should have been world champions. The Rangers were seen as a struggling team coming into the postseason, had great run of success in the postseason with all those road victories against the Orioles and Rays and the Astros as well. And then finally win the World Series against the team that was not expected to get there, the Diamondbacks. They were up against the Phillies in the NLCS, and ultimately they just didn't come through. The Diamondbacks were able to get those timely hits, primarily with Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte, and just didn't work out to their liking. And I think that was really the year. I'd still say the Phillies are in a good spot right now to be able to contend. I think they're right there with the Dodgers, the Mets, kind of in that same kind of the same window there as far as the contending teams on the NL side. I wouldn't necessarily say it's ownership that's really kind of cost you getting it to the World Series, or at least a chance to getting there. I think you're still got a good group around you. It's just a matter of how much more ceiling does this team have left. Can they overcome the Dodgers, or is this as good as they're going to get? Do they bring in Imai just to kind of shake things up and try to get a little bit better, but also take the risk of dropping down a little bit because they lose Ranger Suarez? And if Imai does flop, then things work out or are not as quite as successful for you in the rotation. The questions around Nola and his health last year and how he's pitching, and then of course the health around Wheeler. Does this become the team that's suddenly vastly overpaid and doesn't look like it has much chance of success? Those would be kind of the questions there if you're a Philly fan. Then you sign Suarez at third base to protect you in the lineup, trade Hap, play Owen Casey, play Jonathan Long. I mean, I don't mind the idea that you're mentioning there. That would be a really interesting team. Certainly be a very radical shift for where that organization is currently if they were to make that move with Skubal and then do all those other moves that you mentioned. I do think they need to move Casey into that lineup at some point, probably right off the bat here in the beginning of the year. Should the Cowboys trade Dak? And I think the Cowboys signed Pickens to a big deal. I think they'll end up signing Pickens to the franchise tag. I just think that's the way it's going to be going. As far as Dak, there's no way they're going to trade on Dak right now. The time to trade Dak was about 2 years ago. I was advocating for them to trade him to the Cleveland Browns and be able to get a couple of first-round picks, maybe even convince them to trade a first-round pick and Myles Garrett to you for Dak Prescott. But now at this point, there's no way Dak's moving on. Jerry Jones would not let that happen, so it's kind of pointless to argue it out here because Jerry Jones just ain't going to have that. Cardinals suck. They're in a tough spot, I will say that. Let's see here. Easy Mai, Skubal, Steele, Horton, Boyd, Tyone, Shota, Assad, a World Series rotation. I would say yes, with Skubal at the top, Imai, Steele kind of as your 2A, 2B, and then probably Boyd as your 4, and then Horton, Shota as your 5. Of course, you'd have injuries in there. Steele coming back from injury, as far as having depth there would be nice as well. Would that be worthy of a World Series? I would say yes. Jose, you can't say that John Middleton is spending money to help us win the World Series. I mean, he is spending pretty good money, I will say that. Welcome in, JG. Welcome back. Appreciate you joining us. Could Okamoto be holding up the market? No. Okamoto is not that big of a free agent to be holding up the market, but I will agree that there are some teams that are in that price range that are waiting on Okamoto because he has an actual deadline, whereas these other free agents do not. The third base market, I don't think he's necessarily holding up the third base market either. As far as Bregman, Bichette, if you want to include him in the third base market, I would. The trade market at third base for Arenado and others, Eugenio Suarez as well. Do I think Okamoto's holding it up? No, but I think some of the similarly valued players to Okamoto could be waiting for his market to resolve itself simply because there's a deadline for him and the others don't. I'm Heel. Welcome back. If the Blue Jays get Bregman and Tucker, I think they would be a better team than the Dodgers. Imagine Kirk, Vlad, Clement, Jimenez, Bregman, Schneider, Varsho, Tucker, and Springer. That would be a World Series caliber lineup, and they already were in the World Series last year. That would be probably World Series favorite for sure on the American League side if they are not considered that already with the additions they've made to their roster. I do not think this is a completed roster, though. I do think they will add at least one of those two. If I had to put my money on one right now, I would put it on Tucker. But that would certainly be a World Series caliber team. Now, is it better than the Dodgers? I would say that pitching matters more in a series like that, and I think the Dodgers have so many options when it comes to pitching. Are all of them going to work at the same time? No. Are they all going to be pitching very well? No. Are you going to have to rely on probably one or two guys to really get the job done for you, like the Dodgers have done each of the past 2 seasons? Yes. But the Dodgers have the arms to be able to do so. The Blue Jays have done a nice job at least trying to improve their ability in that rotation by bringing in Dylan Cease and the other arms that they brought in as well with Cody Ponce and so forth. But I'd still say the pitching advantage rests solely with the Dodgers over any other team. The Dodgers just have so much talent on the pitching side, both in the rotation and in the bullpen. I do think they're going to have some nice rebound years from some guys, and of course they added the number 1 reliever in the game in Edwin Diaz as well. Pat's got a first down. I think they just won, actually, from what I just saw, 28-24. I think that game went final anyway. Pats are in the playoffs. Game-winning drive. I am just watching a minute 36 of it. Let's watch the end of it. Drake May is so good. Oh, there's the touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson. They have a three-headed monster at running back. Hopefully Henderson's healthy, though. All right, let's keep it going, kind of finish up these comments, and we'll get into the NBA and NFL talk here. As a Raider fan, your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza as their #1 pick? They need a quarterback, but they need a lot of things. To me, it's always more valuable to trade down. So even in a year where you're #1, your pick is #1, or whatever the case may be. If we look at Tankathon real quick, let me see where they sit. Giants are obviously right there with Vegas. Say the Giants decide to trade their #1 pick. They trade down to a team like Arizona for a quarterback or the Jets for a quarterback. Vegas would be left with probably the second best quarterback on the board, depending on who you believe is #1. As far as Mendoza, my thoughts on him, I've watched very little college football. I'm not the biggest college football fan, but I would say as far as where he's at for me, he's not in the top 10 quarterbacks of probably the last 20 years that have come out. Could he still be a good one? Absolutely. Does he kind of fit this? Does he kind of fit with what the Raiders would need? Obviously, they need a quarterback, but the type of quarterback that would be successful in Vegas, I have my questions, as I would with any other quarterbacks in this draft. I'm not sold on any of the quarterbacks, to be honest, in this draft. I've looked a lot more at the defensive players in this draft, because as a Cowboy fan, that's what we need is defense. So I'm a lot more well-versed on them. I'm going to have to look a lot more closely at the quarterbacks when we get closer to the draft time. But right now, if I'm running a team, I'm always more interested in trading down, even if my position of need is at the top of the board. So say that Vegas gets a call and goes from 2 to say, I don't know, say New Orleans calls, or say Miami calls. Miami would probably have to give you 2 first-round picks in addition to #10 just to move up. Now that would probably take you out of taking a quarterback in the first round, but then you get a really premium defensive asset at #10 or an offensive line piece to help rebuild there, and then kind of go forward and get your quarterback in next year's draft. Punt it down the road. Does that work for Raiders fan base? Probably not. But that's what I would do as the GM, because I'm always about trying to accumulate talent and accumulate more value. So I'm always a fan of moving down in any draft that I'm in. Unless your team is literally 1 player away, you should almost never look to trade up, in my opinion. So teams that trade up, say you're a team like Miami and you need that quarterback. Are the Dolphins 1 quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl? Hell no. Are they 1 quarterback away from being a legitimate franchise? I'd say any team is, because of how valuable quarterback is. But I'd say they could find some serviceable options on the free agent side of things to at least get them by for another year until they get up a little bit higher in the draft. Or if they find a quarterback that they like lower in the draft, is always an option as well. But, still a little early for me on the offensive side. Like I said, I know a lot more about defensive players than anything else. The Pats won, yes. Very happy about that. My bankroll is as well. Dodger Blue, if the Dodgers signed Tucker, what would they have to give up since he was offered the qualifying offer? Good question. I believe if they're already having to give up the 2nd and 5th round picks, I believe, for Edwin Diaz and his turning down the qualifying offer, if I remember correctly. They would have to give up another pick as well. They'd be limited with international money and so forth. And I want to say their pick moves down if they sign 2 guys. But those would be the consequences. Would the Dodgers care about any of that? Hell no. They already gave up stuff to the Mets. They did. I'm heel. I think Murakami going to the White Sox was very smart, because now he can perform like an average player and look like a diamond compared to garbage players and be overvalued in free agency. To a certain extent, I'll agree with you, but teams still look at all the players around the league and kind of view them through the same lens. Player X played really well and has this X WOBA and has this type of barrel rate and all those kinds of things, and player Y has this type of thing. Then, of course, they flip over the card and say, oh, that's that player, that's that player. I'll go for the one that I can sign for a little bit cheaper. If they believe they can get Murakami on a deal next year, or whenever he does hit free agency at that point, I'm sure they'll try to sign him to the contract to their liking. But my point is, front offices think very similarly. I don't think it necessarily would matter too much to his free agency or future free agent prospects as far as the dollar amount they'll get because he signed in Chicago. But I will say the pressure will be off of him from a media standpoint. Say if he had gone to the Mets, he would be counting on to be the power replacement for Pete Alonso. With the Chicago White Sox, he doesn't have that kind of pressure there. So from that standpoint, I will agree with you there. It was very smart of him to take that deal. And with how many question marks there were around his swing and miss, if he can demonstrate the ability to be the power bat that we all thought he could be with a decent contact rate, he could certainly do very well in free agency at that time. And he's still very young. He's much younger than Okamoto. I believe Okamoto's around 30. I think Murakami, if I remember correctly, is around 26. But going to Chicago, again, kind of fits with the age group of players he'll be with as well. Also, Murakami will be playing in the AL Central. It'll be the easiest division in MLB, so good choice for him. Big props to him as agent. Well, he'll still be facing Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez from the Twins in that division. Guardians always end up having good pitching as well. The Royals certainly have had better pitching in recent years than they have in the past. So it's still a very good division. And then, of course, you have the Tigers pitching with arguably the best pitcher in the game in Tarek Skubal, depending on which one you prefer between Skeens and Skubal right now. But still a good division as far as starting pitchers. Andrew, will the Twins trade one of their starting pitchers and then Buxton ask out? It's sounding like the Twins are going to hold pat on their starters for now. I was of the belief before the sale that got completed anyway with the Pohlads that they were looking to offload a little bit more salary and continue their teardown like we saw at the trade deadline. The fact remains that they have added now in the offseason to the tune of $7 million already to Josh Bell. Now, I'm not trying to draw too much conclusion from it, but you're not signing Josh Bell to a one-year deal at $7 million. When you had a, Ty France edition last year that was pennies, pennies for what they were willing to spend. Same thing for Harrison Bader and others that they brought in. Bader's going to do very well in free agency this year, by the way. But as far as the Twins trading Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez, I thought they should have. I thought they should have continued the teardown this offseason and really recouped some real value. Could they still do so? I think they could. But will they? I doubt it. I think this is more of a trade deadline thing at this point and trying to see if they can really recoup some value like they did this past season. Let's see here. Is Mendoza pick by default? Is he the number one pick by default looking at the weak quarterback draft? I keep hearing people talking about Dante Moore and the kid from South Carolina. The kid from South Carolina did not look ready to be a number one pick at all. I do not see that comp at all. But Mendoza is probably going to be in that number one, number two pick conversation if I had to guess when it's all said and done. Mike, welcome in. Appreciate you guys joining us. B. Lee, welcome in. If you guys haven't hit that subscribe button already, got about 29 of you guys in our chat right now. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe as well. Why do the Cubs want to give up future All-Stars for Skubal? Shaw and Horton's upside outweighs Skubal. Skubal is good, but he's not worth giving up two guys who still have huge upside. To a certain extent, I'll agree with you. I would say that the teams that are one superstar pitcher away from a Skubal really making the difference between a World Series team and not, I think that would be a difference-making team. Now, as far as the rotation that you pointed out earlier, with Skubal being in there and Horton and everybody, and Imai, I think that would be a World Series caliber rotation. Would it be, or at least would they have the team around him to be able to get there? I doubt it, considering the Dodgers still exist. But as far as the trade itself, I would still be of the mind to not give up those assets for Skubal because I don't think you're a player away. Now, if you were, I could hear that conversation a little bit more completely, but for right now, I would much rather have the future of those young players than anything else. Last year was their year to go all in. This is not that same year. All right, I'm Heel. What if we get another Patriots dynasty? I swear it's like every NFL fan can't win for. Honestly, I'm here for this one. I was here for the Tom Brady era when they had Randy Moss. I was a big Randy Moss fan because, again, Vikings fan. I was a really small kid anyway. Still remember the game when he torched the Cowboys on Turkey Day in his rookie season. I still remember that game in my mind. He was fantastic, but that's why I've cheered for the Patriots when Randy Moss went out that way. I wanted to see his career get back onto the right track, and it did. I still think the greatest team we've ever seen in an NFL game, in NFL period, was that 2007 season, I believe, where they were perfect up until the Super Bowl and then lost to the Giants. The better team did not win. The better team, the best team in NFL history, just did not play. How do I put this? The helmet catch. Things just didn't go their way that day. It would be a good way to put it. All right. Cardinals do need a quarterback. Murray should play baseball. Maybe. I mean, he's too busy playing Call of Duty, of course, but, AL East is a juggernaut. Very true. Giants trade down and hire Marcus Freeman. Come on. Um, we'll see. Like I said, when you get to drafting, I always am a fan of trading down. Period, no matter what the situation. Pretty much. Could Drake May to make the Pats the team to beat in the AFC East for years to come? I think they might already be there. I think the Bills have kind of fallen off, even though they just lost. I think that the Bills, with Josh Allen, he's the better quarterback, I would say, right now, but I think the better team resides in New England, and their future looks a little bit brighter. They're going to be able to spend here in free agency. Meanwhile, the Bills are still trying to parcel down their payroll, and their defense looks like Swiss cheese right now. So I think this is probably the last best chance Josh Allen's going to have to win a Super Bowl. And then it might be, hey, this great quarterback up there in Buffalo just never was able to get over the hump against Patrick Mahomes early in his career. And now that the team is more expensive around him, he can't quite get back up to those same heights. You look at Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, very similar situation to me. I'd say Buffalo is probably a little bit better. Obviously, they had a better defense at that time in the early parts of Josh Allen's career. But, for Drake May, the sky's the limit for him, man. I mean, they never really tested this year. I think the Bills were the last test they had, and they failed it. But tonight was a good win for them, putting them into the postseason. And I think they're going to have great success for years to come. All right, try to catch up on a few more comments, and we'll have some fun with some trade machine stuff and get into some NFL and NBA stuff as well. Watch out for the White Sox. If they can snag a couple vet starters, they could be a contender. Contender for a wild card, maybe. Contender for a series? Hell no. Contender for the division? Hell no. But as far as them having a really nice roster, I do like what they've done, but the pitching still isn't there. They're still probably two legitimate starters away from being a contender for a wild card. But as far as a couple of vets, sure, they could go after one-year guys. Sure, they could bring in a guy like Zach Gallen, would probably be the richest deal they've ever given. But we'll see where they go. They have a good team, but I would not do anything to derail that development. I'm not trading away prospects for anything right now to try to win now type of a move. But they got a good nucleus coming. We'll see if they can keep the momentum going as well. Rasplata, what can the Diamondbacks do to fill up third base and first besides needing a new starter and closer? I think they're still going to go with the youth movement at those two spots. Now, if they can move on from Marte and flex those players around a little bit and bring in a Bregman, maybe it makes a little bit more sense. But for right now, until Marte goes, I don't think they're going to do a whole lot at first or third base. They might add a utility player in the vein of a Jorge Polanco type who can take a lot of at-bats at either one of those positions if those guys don't pan out. But I think they're going to let those young guys try to have a little bit of time here. We'll see how long of a leash they give those young players. Let's see. Should the Spurs trade for Anthony Davis to play the 4? I would love to get some of the assets that the Spurs have if I'm a Mavericks fan, but I don't think they should make that move at all. If I'm the Spurs front office, I'm looking at Giannis if you're looking for a big move, but even then I'm still hesitant to do it. I think this team should just continue to grow as they are now, and then wait for a Kevin Durant type situation to come up where minimal assets are needed to acquire a veteran who can really push you over the hump. You look at the way the Thunder have been built, kind of one of the more unique situations in the entire game. I think they need to continue modeling their success off of what the Thunder have done so far. However, with one caveat, the Thunder obviously have so many assets because they've been doing it for so long. The Spurs have a team that's ready to win probably next year with Wembanyama and Castle and Harper. They have a good young group, but they don't really have any elite wings. They have some good guards, and then of course they have Wembanyama. Where's the kind of the connectors between there? I think that's going to be the challenge for the Spurs. If there's a free agent that comes up, if there's a trade target that comes out like a Trey Murphy, I think it'd be a great piece for them to try to acquire. Uncle Ted, welcome in. If the market is that soft on Murakami, Tucker and Belly, I agree. You bet one lands in Arizona. I do think the market is a little bit softer on some players, but I still think the big guys are going to get their money. Bellinger's still going to get his money. I think he's going to get at least probably a 4 or 5 year deal, maybe more, depending on how the market really evolves. Tucker, I think, has already got offers in hand from some of these teams offering him big AAVs with a shorter term contract. I think that the bigger term is what he's going to end up signing for, though. I think he'll easily be able to get that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 year deal somewhere in that range is I think what he'll ultimately sign for. Texans DC will be the Titans' next head coach. I could see it. That defense for Houston is elite. I think their offense should have played a little bit better today. They didn't hold the Raiders down as much as I thought they would, but they're still a very good team. As far as the Titans' head coaching job, We started out hearing McCarthy as a name. I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the hire they go for, just to kind of have a quarterback um, savvy coach coming in to help shepherd Cam Ward, who actually looked pretty good today and is starting to show some development finally. Um, but I think more of an offensive-minded coach would be the way I would go if I'm the Titans. I would not be going for another defensive-minded coach. I get it. It's a smaller market team. You win with defense, Vrabel, all that kind of thing. I would rather go with the offensive-minded coach and just try to keep up with the Joneses in the NFL. Because offense, to me, is where the game is won and lost. Sure, defense does help you, but the offense, if you don't have a quarterback that you can win with, you're nowhere. And they need to continue to develop him primarily. We'll see how things work out. The Bulls and Hawks game was a joke. No one plays defense no more. Andrew, I actually watched that game. That was an incredible game. Was the defense all world? Hell no. Was the effort there? Sure. Was it always in the right way? No. But the effort was certainly there. It was an up and down track meet to be would be an understatement. 80 points pretty much around in the first half by both teams. Ended up 152 to 150 or 151 to 150, somewhere around there. It was crazy. But that finish was fantastic and just hooked it at the end with Johnson's rebounds as well today. So I'm very happy with the outcome there. But he just missed a triple-double, 1 assist shy. Trae Young, his best game since coming back from injury. And we'll see what the Hawks do at the deadline. They have some options. Do they bring back Trae Young and sign him to an extension? Do they go after Anthony Davis? They're the one team that's seen as the favorite for Giannis as far as the assets that are needed to acquire him. But will Giannis go there? Will the Bucks heed his desire to play elsewhere if that's indeed his wish to play in New York or somewhere else? Lots of questions around what could happen with the Hawks next. Jay's trade for Cole Ragans or Cattell, keeping Yasevich. I don't think you're keeping Yasevich if you're getting Cattell Marte. As far as Cole Ragans, I think he's probably a little bit more gettable out of those two. But I don't think he's going to be traded at all from the Royals. So many teams have already tried to get him out of there. Specifically, the Boston Red Sox have asked for Ragans as part of the return for Duran, and that was shot down pretty quickly there. Yasevich, to me, he really showed something this year. Very little experience at the big league level. I would rather hold on to I'd rather hold on to Yasevich. If I can find a way to acquire Cattell Marte, sure, but I don't think they have the assets to get it done without including him. What if the Red Sox came out of nowhere and got Cattell Marte to bat in front of Murakami? Again, I don't think they need to do that. They have a good mix up the middle already. I don't want to disrupt that. I think there are other teams that could use Marte more, and they don't have the pitching prospects that are necessary to go to the Diamondbacks anyway. You're telling me they're going to take Smith off your hands? That does nothing for me if I'm the Diamondbacks. I want premium assets back on the pitching side. They might have some guys down there in the minor leagues, but none of those guys, to me, are major league ready yet. 5 players in his IG comments today, all commenting again today. They're doing full court press on him. They should be. I mean, where was this from the Yankees when Soto was a free agent? I don't want to go back to harping on the Yankees, but we talked about last year the rumblings about issues between Judge and Soto. I don't think there really was much to really report there. But if you're really boys, you stay in contact with each other in the off season, and to say that hey, maybe you changed his number. Hey, you tell your boy you changed your number if you're really that close. You don't go an entire off season without talking. And hey, he wanted to get away from unplugged from the game. Sure, I get that for a week or two, a month maybe, but you still at least check in, say, hey, how's things going, something like that. But you look at the Blue Jays. This is kind of the exact opposite. Trying to keep staying in there, keeping the idea front of mind, those kinds of things. You just saw Pitt interested in Nakamoto. They should be. He would be a good option for them. Kind of a glove first player. Improved bat, or it would be an improvement with the bat as well for what they have, but would be a good option. Draymond Green got flagrant fouls yesterday. Do you think he will get suspended at all? Maybe. With Draymond Green's history, you never know. The league likes to treat him with kid gloves when it comes to enforcement. He's a very vocal individual on and off the court. He's a very demonstrative individual on and off the court, and they like that for the views of the NBA, for his ability to kind of protect, Steph Curry from some of that physical play. But do I think it has a place in today's NBA? Not to that level. Now, if we're talking 1990s, early 2000s basketball, shoot, he'd be in the game tomorrow. Shoot, he might have not even gotten ejected. So we'll see what happens. Draymond, to me, he's pretty safe, though, in the NBA. The NBA kind of treats him with kid gloves. They're afraid to really throw the book at him, especially after the NBA Finals, which, to me, was it a bit of an overreach? Maybe. I'm not really sold one way or the other. To me, you still had more chances to win that series than just having him being suspended for one game. That did not cost you the series. What cost him the series was LeBron going nuclear and Kyrie hitting the shot and those kinds of things. Okamoto platooning with Barger is intriguing. If we let Bo walk, that'd be interesting. I'm not sure he'd be comfortable platooning, but I think Okamoto will sign somewhere that he's going to get pretty consistent playing time, whether it be as a utility infielder, which he has the ability to be, or as an everyday player over at first, second, third. I think he'd play any one of those positions in the infield right now. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some NBA and NFL talk here. Let me pull up the NBA board right now because I'm going to start at the bottom here because I'm excited for the trade deadline coming up. Um, of course, Anthony Davis. I'm a Mavericks fan, so you guys know I'm paying attention to it from that perspective more than anything else. But I'm excited because they have so many pieces that they could deal. And you look at these other teams that are ahead of them. They're not going to really jump up into the top five of this the lottery contention odds or anything like that. But the lottery is still the lottery. They won with 1.8% chance to win Cooper Flag, and he looks like a top 50 player right now in the NBA, and that's without a three-point shot. Just wait till he gets a three-point shot. We're talking about him in the same class as SGA, probably as soon as, I'd give it 3 to 4 years before we're talking about him in that group. But he's certainly a top 50 player to me right now. You look at the teams that are above them, though, teams that don't hold their own pick. The Clippers, anyway, have that pick gone. The Pelicans have their pick gone. Is there a way, if you're trying to trade at the deadline, that you find a way to acquire the pick from Atlanta or the pick from Oklahoma City? Oklahoma City, I think, is going to hold on to that pick. It's just what they do. Now, Atlanta, I think with a desperate team in Atlanta who's trying to win right now, there's a chance you could pry that asset out of them. Would you be able to with a more conservative general manager? Hell no. Thought process would be, hey, we're trying to win. We're trying to have a consistent period of success here. We're not going to give away 20 years of a top 10 player in the game, or at least potential at that, to allow him to be traded for an aging veteran player as good as Anthony Davis is, top 15 in the sport right now, when he's healthy. But, of course, how often is he healthy? Injury risk, the contract. I think he's not going to be nearly the return of what a normal value player for that type of, or for what he brings to the table should be. We kind of knew that going into this, or going into the trade with Luka, or coming out of the trade, I should say, with Luka. Nobody thought Davis was going to Dallas for Luka, obviously, aside from Nico Harrison. But anyway, different story for a different day. But as far as Anthony Davis, he's still going to command a decent return. Decent meaning probably a couple first-round picks, expiring contracts, maybe a young player. And if he's still playing at the level that he is right now, putting up, say, 20 and 15 a night, with 2 or 3 blocks a night, with really good defense, I think that's a really valuable player in today's game. Is it the same Anthony Davis we saw in the bubble? Probably not, but he has the ability to turn that on. We saw when he got over to Dallas, the first 3 quarters were absolutely unbelievable. Best player in the sport that season for that 3 quarters was Anthony Davis. But then, of course, the injury happens, you have the contract, and all that has happened since then. Is there a team out there like Atlanta that gets really desperate on the Eastern Conference side that tries to make a run in the East and sells their future for a chance to win this year? Because if you're Atlanta, if I'm Atlanta, realistic outlook, say you don't go after Anthony Davis, you hold on to the pick and you do kind of piecemealing around the edges of this roster. You bring in Michael Porter Jr. or something like that, maybe a backup center, Jakob Pertl, or you say Zubac before he got hurt. Would that be a difference-making move to get you to the NBA Finals? To me, no. I think there'd be 3 or 4 other teams that'd be significantly better chances to get to the NBA Finals than you, just on the Eastern Conference side. Detroit, New York, I think would be in that class. Cleveland, if they figure things out, could be there. Right now, I have real doubts about them. Boston, they're going to have Jason Tatum back at some point this year. They're going to go on a run. And what do they do with the Anthony Simons contract? There's some. Miami got off to a really nice start this year and has started to kind of backslide a little bit. Do they make a big addition at the trade deadline and pass you by? And then, of course, you have Atlanta, kind of right around that periphery of on the Eastern Conference. And of course, you have Orlando and Philadelphia playing better than they're expected to be. It's tougher on the Eastern Conference side because there's no true favorites. New York fans will tell you there's something different, that it's New York's to win on the Eastern Conference side. But for me, a team like Atlanta has a real chance here to push their best foot forward and push the envelope. Say you bring in Anthony Davis, he immediately becomes your starting center. your center position, you're already looking for a center right now. Porzingis, while he was good and kind of spaced the floor for you, Davis is a much better version of Porzingis. Porzingis has always been seen as kind of a similar player to Anthony Davis. I remember him being traded to Dallas at the beginning of his tenure with Luka, and everybody's saying, hey, this is kind of the big man counterpoint to Anthony Davis. Kind of that similar, big who can stretch the floor, shoot the shot, and still be able to anchor a good defense. Porzingis is not that in his career, and his health certainly has deteriorated even further than that of Anthony Davis. Davis solves a lot of issues for you defensively. They're one of the worst defensive teams. We just talked about how bad their defense was in the game today. But if you were to go after an Anthony Davis, if you're Atlanta, if I'm Dallas, I'm holding out for that pick. I'm not making a trade until you tell me definitively either you're trading me the pick or you're not acquiring him. That's flatly where I would put the line if I'm Dallas, which would probably mean other teams probably going to have a better chance to get him. If I'm the front office, when I have a long view of the Atlanta Hawks, I'm looking at this team going, well, I could have a long future there with Debanza or something like that if I get lucky in the draft, or a one-year run at the NBA Finals out of the Eastern Conference. And maybe I get lucky and win the series, maybe I don't, but I'd get 1 year, maybe 2, because of the contract of Anthony Davis. With Debanza, I have a much bigger runway, and then I still have Trae Young. What do you do at that point? The seasoned GM would probably tell you hold on to your pieces. But I realize with the situation in Atlanta, this is probably your best chance to win. I don't think this is a free agent destination. You're not going to free agency has really changed in recent years, but top free agents really don't change too frequently, at least with the new rules, with the money and so forth changing hands. But trades do happen, and Atlanta is never really seen as that destination. To me, this is a really good chance for them to win this year, and they should be pushing to try to win. That would be my thought process. If I was in Atlanta, one of the few times I would ever try to win or push my chips to the center and sacrifice the future, this year would be that for Atlanta. Different case for Detroit. I don't think they necessarily need an Anthony Davis. I think they need shooting. I think they're probably 2 shooters away from being a really nice team. We saw how good they were with shooters last year. I think they just need to get some nice shooting around them. I don't necessarily trust a Karis LeVert. I'd take that type of a contract and try to pivot it into a ball-handling guy who can shoot, a Colin Sexton type, an Anthony Simons type, maybe even a bigger wing to help us on the defensive side. But their team is very good. Their pace worries me as far as how much usage they're getting out of Cade Cunningham. Luka Doncic type numbers is how much they're utilizing him at the point, and that's going to wear down on him over time. And so I'd like them to get another ball handler in there and some shooting. But as far as Anthony Davis, I think they're set with Durant at the center spot, and I don't think they necessarily need to play Davis at the 4. I think spacing would be a little bit worrisome as well. All right, let's try to check up on a few of these comments here. Would you do 80 for Podol plus type of a deal from the Raptors? Podol to me is one of the worst contracts in the sport. I get Davis's contract ain't no peachy keen, but for me, hell no. I would not do Podol. Now, if you're talking, if I was going to settle for a lesser package for Anthony Davis, I would be talking a couple firsts. I would be talking expiring deals, but obviously Toronto doesn't have that, so they'd have to probably give you quickly. Would be the piece I would have to stomach taking on as far as a contract matching for contract matching purposes. And then what's that kid's name? Broyles would be one of the pieces I would try to get for as a young piece to look at. But then as far as guard play with the Raptors, you're basically left with Shed. That doesn't really make much sense for you either. Do you take an Ingram if you're Dallas? I wouldn't. Doesn't really fit the timeline. Doesn't really fit what you're looking for either. He's a nice player, but would really more clog up the floor than anything else with Cooper Flagg and P.J. Washington, Najee Marshall. Doesn't really fit. I do think there's a couple of teams that are fits, like the Hawks. There's a couple others we'll get into later, but those would be some of the teams I'd be looking at. What NBA trade can help any team come close to beating OKC this year? Good question. Let's see here. Let me do it through Fanspo. So, roughly as far as like standings and so forth, in the Western Conference, Thunder, Nuggets, Spurs, Lakers, Rockets, Timberwolves, I think are the teams that have a chance to get to the NBA Finals out of the West. I don't really think Suns, Grizzlies, Warriors, Trailblazers, Mavs, Jazz, Clippers, Kings, Pelicans, none of those teams really have a chance. So those top 6 are really where it's at for me. Are any of those teams, could they make a move to get them to a better chance of getting to the finals than the Thunder? You look at the Nuggets, they had a great offseason. They have Jokic right there with SGA. What would they have to do to get over the hump? They don't really have the assets to do it. They're going to have to do it with the team they already have. So they're not going to make a move to get them above the Thunder. They're just going to have to work with what they got. For the Spurs, they could add a wing, somebody like a Trey Murphy to give them the shooting that they need. But all it's going to take for them to really get there is more time. Getting Wembanyama, getting Harper, getting Castle really comfortable working together. And just figuring out what they're going to do as far as shooting going forward. I think it's probably a year early. That's why I'm not making a move on the Spurs. I stand pat. And then in the offseason, I try to acquire somebody via free agency and try to help my team that way. And then I search the trade market, but not until then. Lakers, that's a tough one because I think Luka is all-world offensively. Defensively, you can see this team has all kinds of issues. Limitations with LeBron, even though he just had his season high last night in a terrible game between the Lakers and Clippers. That was brutal. If you guys watched that one, I'm sorry. Your eyes are still probably not recovered from watching that horrible game. But that was without Luka. That was without Austin Reeves. That team was rough. Harden had a terrible game, but yet was one of the leading scorers. Kawhi had a terrible game, but yet was the leading scorer, I believe, for the Clippers. Zubac went down in that game due to injury. It was ugly. But even with all that being said, Luka is still Luka. Anything can happen. Trade deadline this year, if they really want a chance, I would say you need more shooting first and foremost, and you need another center. So for me, the ideal trade would probably be something along the lines of Klay Thompson and Daniel Gafford from Dallas going to the Lakers for some combination of a pick and expiring contracts. Maxi Kleber would probably have to be one of those deals. Maybe a Jordan Vanderbilt coming back the other way, but then you have questions as far as depth at your 3 and 4 spot. But those would be the pieces I'd be looking to acquire from the Lakers. Does that make them better than the Thunder? To me, no. But again, Luka, you never know. As far as the Rockets go, they already made their addition with Kevin Durant, but they're still not very good. To me, they still have a lot of flaws. They just lost the other night to the Pelicans at home. Just could not figure out how to have a good offense in the final minutes of that game, even with Kevin Durant healthy. So to me, if they were going to make an addition, the loss of Fred VanVleet due to injury really hurts them. I would hold off on this trade if I'm the Mavericks, but the name that I would go for if I'm the Houston Rockets would be Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie Irving is an absolutely fantastic model player for the Mavericks right now. He is working so much with Cooper as far as his ball handling. It's really showing and paying dividends. I would not do the trade right now. But if you're looking at the future, if the Rockets offer you some obscene package for Kyrie, sending back only the salary that you'd be getting back probably would be Fred VanVleet in return, and be able to get, say, 3 firsts for Kyrie, I mean, it'd be hard to turn down, especially if you get your own pick back. But, I think that's a trade that probably happens in a couple of years for the Mavericks at this point. I don't think they trade Kyrie, but that would be the move I would make. If they don't get that one, maybe they could go after a LaMelo type or a Kobe White or something along those lines to kind of help initiate the offense. But I would try to go for a more veteran, proven guy who can do it. And I don't really think that guy is on the market or at the trade deadline this year. The last team there is the Wolves, as far as a chance to get to the Thunder or beat them and make it to the finals. To me, it's all going to be dependent on guard play and health of their team going forward. If they don't have their health, they don't have a chance. But they still need to add, and I think a guard would be necessary. They don't really have assets to do it. Best case scenario would be a guy like Colin Sexton, but I've tried doing several trades to get him even a salary like Colin Sexton. There's just not a way to do it. So then you're looking even cheaper guys. Kobe White would probably be the pinnacle of that. And they don't really have the assets to me make that offer happen either. I think other teams would outbid you for him. Then you look at the depreciated or the distressed asset guys, the Russell Westbrooks of the world. Maybe if you catch lightning in a bottle, he could be a difference maker for you, but he's well past his prime at this point, and it'll be curious to see what happens ultimately with him, because I think he will be traded here at the deadline. He's had a nice season with the Kings so far. But those would be the teams on the west side to at least compete with the Thunder there. Toronto can for sure. It just depends on which piece they want to trade for. I think Toronto could make an offer for AD. I would agree with you there. What Eastern Conference team can make a trade to separate from the others? As far as Eastern Conference teams to make it, or they could make a deal to separate themselves, I think any one of these teams could. Pistons could. Knicks, I think, are already right there, but if they really wanted to separate, go after Giannis. Raptors are already a good team. I think they could become an even better team. I don't think they could become a great team, but I think they could really add some nice premium talent like an Anthony Davis to really elevate their chances. Celtics, this was supposed to be a down year, and yet they're, what, 4 in the East? Like, what? They're getting Jason Tatum. Their one trade asset is Anthony Simons. Talk about them trying to acquire a center for him at the deadline is abound, and trying to save a little bit more money on that deal as well. So if they can find a center out there that's a little cheaper than the contract they're sending out in Simons, I think they would do it in a heartbeat right now. 76ers, I would just keep going with the core that they have, and if they can find somebody to take on the contract of Embiid, great. Ain't going to happen. Same thing with George, but I would just keep going with the model that they're working with. Magic, they already spent their did their big trade with Bane. I don't think they really have the ammo to go get another one done. Heat, they could go after all kinds of different things, but I don't think any of them necessarily make them a favorite in the Eastern Conference. Even if they got Anthony Davis, I don't think I would view them as a favorite out of the East. I still would probably prefer the Knicks. The Cleveland Cavaliers, if they figure out how to get their rear end, to kind of get in gear, I think they'd be just fine and right at the East, or right at the top of the East anyway with the Knicks. I don't think they need to make a move. But the shooting hasn't been very good from three-point shooting this year. They have 4 really good three-point shooters that are just having down years or health issues this year. Getting healthy and just getting that shot back into form, I think, is the best case scenario for them. But if they wanted to make a trade, they're not going to be a team for Giannis or AD or something like that. But shooting would be what I'd be looking for. Maybe a 3-team deal that could send Nah from the Atlanta Hawks to the Cavaliers could be an interesting piece. Maybe you get into the LaMelo Ball sweepstakes, and with Darius Garland's injury history, maybe you send him out the other way. Those would be some interesting moves, but that's more shuffling the chairs on the deck. It doesn't really make you a difference-making player and get you to the NBA Finals for certain. Hawks, I think they're the one team that, as poor as their defense is, they have the shot making. They have the defense from certain positions that doesn't show necessarily in the game, in the actual game right now. I think Jalen Johnson's a really good defender, but doesn't have anybody protecting the rim behind him. I think Dyson Daniels is a really good defender. Recovers up a lot of the issues Trae Young has, but when Trae Young's in there, it completely offsets their floor. It completely makes them play 4-on-5 essentially defensively. So if they can find a way to offload Trae, get something back of value in return, or if they even include Trae Young in the deal for Anthony Davis, I think that's a team that goes from one of the worst defenses in the NBA to a top 10 defense in the NBA just in one move. And that difference defensively could be the difference from them being, in the play-in to being a top 3 or 4 seed in the East and possibly making it to the NBA Finals. As a Sixer fan, the 27 pick from the Clippers is looking good for us, but it is early to tell, and the Clippers get a first-round pick for Harden. There is conversation about Harden being available at the deadline. I'm just curious if they would actually do that because of Ballmer and so forth, or if they would just still want to put a good product out there on the floor. Ballmer constantly talks about still trying to win, and I don't think he's looking at it realistically. They are nowhere close to winning, and I think he'll eventually get to that point where he agrees and says, hey, we got to move on. But how quickly can they act on that will be the question. B. Lee, I think they might look at Emmanuel Quickly and Grady and picks for LaMelo type of a trade. That'd be an interesting move. I'd probably do that if I'm both sides, honestly. I would like that type of a move, I think, a little bit better for both sides as well, rather than an Anthony Davis one, which is the one we keep hearing them about. Can Anthony Davis to the T-Wolves make a true contender? He can't be traded to the Timberwolves unless you're doing, I believe, Rudy Gobert. Dallas isn't going to take Rudy Gobert back. Now, if you were to do like a couple of salaries combined together to get to the number, you could, but again, with the trade rules as far as the aprons, they can't do it. It has to be basically a matching salary coming back, and it's just not feasible with the Wolves. Plus, they don't have the assets or anything that Dallas would really want. Jaden McDaniels would be a nice piece. Dillingham could be an interesting, I guess, add, but they don't really have any tradable picks that would be useful. Do you think Lauri Markkanen from the Jazz can make a team a contender? I keep hearing things about him going to Detroit. I would not be surprised if that one happens at this point. But look for the Warriors who've been connected to him in years past as well. Warriors, Indiana are both looking at centers, something I should mention as well. With Zubac going down and the injuries around Gafford, Gafford's just coming back and starting to play a little bit better since he's been healthier the last couple of weeks. But if with Zubac going down for at least the next few weeks, Gafford could be the top center that's moved at the deadline, not named Anthony Davis or Giannis, depending on how you view them. Let's see here. I think that's pretty much it as far as as far as the comments anyway. Talked a little bit about the NBA. I'm just, like I said, I'm excited about the trade deadline. We're still a little bit of ways away from it. Players that are traded now cannot be retraded before the deadline unless they're one for one. But excited to see what the trade deadline is going to look like going forward. I'm excited about Anthony Davis. I do think he will be moved. Other names like Giannis, I don't think will be. I think that's more of a trade for the offseason, but we'll see. And then on the NFL side of things, wanted to get into a little bit of NFL talk as well. With the playoff picture kind of getting a little bit more crystallized. Right now, your top teams out there, the Seattle Seahawks look absolutely great. Denver had a tough one today against Jacksonville. New England looks really good. Chicago, they look really good. The playoff teams look really pretty much set. The one team I would probably say is, is in a little bit of trouble here is still Green Bay, but all they have to do is basically win one game and they're in over Detroit. Detroit really needed to win today to have a legitimate chance to get into the postseason. That didn't happen. Struggles against Pittsburgh, I think, have ultimately cost them. But you look at the way this thing is stacking up from a picks perspective. Dallas right now they can't get any higher than 8th based off of how teams schedule or how their standings really look. I think realistically they could jump Kansas City, they could jump Atlanta, they could jump Miami. I don't think they're going to be able to jump Cincinnati or New Orleans, but I think all three of these teams they could jump Dallas because I think Dallas is going to go with Milton as their starting quarterback. To me, he's not a very good quarterback right now. He had a great run with New England last year, but he has not looked like the same quarterback at all this year. So for me, I think Dallas probably ends up with like the 10th pick. So if that happens, that would be a great A plus for Dallas after how the season ended to end up with a top 10 pick. That would be fantastic. You look at the Packers pick, if somehow they're able to luck into getting the Packers to lose both of these games, getting the Lions to win both of their games, and then then you're basically looking at the 18th pick for Green Bay at that time. I think that would be an interesting decision for Dallas what they do in the draft. Do they make a premium pick and then trade this pick down? Do they take that top 10 pick and trade it into the mid-teens? Those would be some very interesting things. But based off of how this board currently sits, I think Dallas would still be happy with how everything works out. Because I don't think Green Bay is going to win in the playoffs. I think they're going to get bounced early. And so then you're looking at a pick in the early to mid-20s at best, or at worst anyway. And I think Dallas would be happy with the way that would unfold. Then, of course, they have to add in free agency. They could even add a third first-rounder if they trade Pickens with a franchise tag. I think that would be a great option for Dallas. That's why I would feed him the ball the next 2 games and really pump up his price. You're still going to tag him. I don't think that's going to change one way or the other, whether he's a good player or a bad player for you the final 2 games. I think you might sit CeeDee Lamb and just say, hey, the concussion issues, or you just want to make sure he's healthy, and so your number 1 target is Pickens over the final couple weeks. And you got soft competition for Pickens to really go off and force feed him the ball. Floor Knight got injured tonight. I hope he's okay, but it looked a little scary as far as the injury. But that would be my path for Dallas. Teams who could use a player like Pickens. Carolina, they're trying to partner McMillan out there. Could they use another upgrade at wide receiver? Possibly. Pittsburgh ain't going to go for him again. Philadelphia ain't trading for him. Houston, they already have Nico. I don't think they would do it. Buffalo, they need a number 1 receiver. Does Buffalo go if they lose in the postseason or in the playoffs again early and don't win the Super Bowl in a year where they really should? Do they go out there and say, hey, Dallas, George Pickens will give you a 1 and just be done with it like the Micah Parsons thing? I would do that right now if I'm Dallas. I mean, that's why I would try to pump up his value because I think a team like Buffalo would be desperate for a wide receiver. Now, do they go the free agent route and try to bring in Mike Evans? I think the tag would come into effect again there. But, if I'm trying to go after one of those 2 receivers, Pickens would be my option. Pickens looked like a top 5 receiver in the sport this year. Of course, had a couple issues the last few weeks. But I think Buffalo, keep an eye on Pickens and Buffalo next year. So today is December 21st. Remember, you heard it here first. Pickens to Buffalo as a very likely outcome. Ayuk going out from San Francisco, I think opens up a big void there in San Francisco if they want a number 1 pass catcher. I'm not sure he's as big of a fit there. The desperation I don't think is necessarily as high in San Francisco for a receiver. I think they're very happy with their system more than anything else. And but that would be a team to watch if they did go after Pickens. Chargers, they have 3 receivers, currently. I don't think they would necessarily do it either. Cleveland, they got Shadur Sanders now as the number 1 quarterback. I think he needs a top receiver. Could you convince them to part with that pick? I think you could for George Pickens. Dallas, of course, I'm sure would try to get Myles Garrett instead of the pick. You'd probably have to include another first-round pick either this year or next year in that trade to get Garrett, and even then I don't think it's enough. But I think Cleveland would be a nice option for Pickens as well. Rams, no. Chicago, they have two good receivers. No. New England absolutely needs a receiver. Pickens could be that guy. They've shown the willingness to take on some questionable character head case issues with Stephon Diggs. He's been great this year as well. So those would be the teams for me to watch on Pickens this offseason for a trade from Dallas if they end up trading him as well. Let's see. Billy, do you actually like Marcus Freeman in New York if that is what happens? There are other names I think would be better fits there, I guess is the best way to put it. Don't want to get too into the weeds, but as far as like, to me, New York requires a special personality to play there, to be a GM there, to be a front office member there, to be a coach. It takes a certain mentality, and certain people are built for it. Some people thrive under it, and some people weather the storm and just kind of tread water, and then others just absolutely fail. I don't know enough about Marcus Freeman to tell one way or the other, but I think there are other names that I would feel more confident in than Marcus Freeman, simply because I don't know him too well. Hope Travis Kelce retires. He looked old this year. Well, he's got 2 games left. I don't think he retires. I think he probably comes back for 1 more year. I don't think this is the way he wants to go out. But when you have, Taylor Swift in your life, that's a pretty good after career life, I suppose, for him. No matter what your thoughts are on him, but Kelce, I think he's still got a good year in him if he wants to play. And Kansas City should be once again in the Super Bowl hunt next year. So we'll see what he decides to do, but I think he's probably got 1 more year in him before he decides to hang it up. Pats should go for Mike Evans instead of Pickens. Evans is older, though, and he's going to probably have the tag as well. I think he'd be a better fit, yes, because of the personality, because of the red zone targets, because of the consistency. Pickens really has 1 year of this level of production. Evans has been doing it his entire career, but again, younger. I would rather partner Pickens with May because of their age, simply because of their age, and the growth factor we've seen from Pickens. Evans, we've seen injuries the last couple of years really derail his seasons, and that would be my biggest fear, is if I do go after him and make a trade with the Buccaneers, give him a second or a first round pick for him, and after he's been tagged and sign him to a big long-term money, that would be my worry with Mike Evans. With Pickens, I don't really have those concerns with injury, etc. I just have to worry about, can he keep it between the ears okay, and then how does he develop with Drake May? Those would be the biggest issues there. You think he would not fit in New York? Like I said, I don't know too much about Marcus Freeman to be able to tell one way or another if he would be a good fit or not. If the Giants keep the pick, who do you think they take? If they keep the number 1 pick, I would take Reese out of Ohio State. But from what I'm seeing, I'm wondering if his draft stock falls. It shouldn't. I think he's by far the best, cleanest prospect in this draft outside of maybe Downs from Ohio State as well. But you're not taking a safety number 1 overall. Reese, you put him at the end, he looks like Myles Garrett day 1. But they just did that with Abdul Carter. Do they just try to bookend him? They've tried that strategy before. Do they go for trading the pick? To me, that would be the best case scenario. But if I'm keeping it, Reese, I think, would have to be the pick for me. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Had a nice long video with you guys. Talked a little bit of the 3 major sports. Didn't really talk too much hockey, but been a crazy day out there in hockey as well. Toronto finally looked like a good team today, but they still lost 5-1. That's a team that's going to have a serious come-to-Jesus meeting pretty soon here. In the Olympic break, I'm expecting some big shakeups there, not necessarily on the bench, but I think that roster needs a shakeup. The loss of Mitch Marner really shows. But Dallas just keeps rolling. Colorado faced the new-look Minnesota Wild today and absolutely smoked them. They look so good, man. Colorado is on a pace to beat that of the Boston Bruins from 2022 for best record in an NHL season. The question is, are they going to wear themselves out during this stretch doing so and playing international hockey? I have my questions. But they certainly, along with the Dallas Stars and now, to me, the Minnesota Wild, are the teams to beat in the NHL. I think the Giants will move down and get more picks. I would as well. But again, that's what I would do in any situation, is I would like to trade down. There was a simulator. I always like to do all kinds of different simulators, but this is one that I've been playing with. If I did a simulation, I always like to do the fast because I hate doing all these ads and waiting for the picks. So right now, 13-ish is where their pick would be. They simulate some offers as to what you might get. A lot of different sites do this. But 13 for 22, 56 and a third, hell no. Let's see what the others offer. 29, 61 and a second, still no. These are all too late for me. This would be the closest one, but then you're having to give up your 4th round pick. If these were the offers, I'm rejecting all of those trades. The 22nd one was close. Fernando Mendoza is not making it to this. That's why I don't like some of these simulations as well. He's not making it to 13. But if I got to this point in the draft, I would say I would probably take edge because they're more valuable than the linebacker. The linebacker, though, would probably be the better position, or probably be the better player, but I got to take the premium position. So I'd take David Bailey. Right now, they're picking supposedly at 21, according to what Tankathon has on their site. Here, they haven't updated it yet, so it's still at 19. You're trading 19. You go back 1 pick and pick up a 7th. Just because I want to see more offers, I'll counter it, actually. Let me see if they'll give me, like, 120 instead. No. A 2, a 3, a 3, a 2, and a 3. It's not a bad offer. I would probably still want more, but I'm going to reject it. I'm not moving down that far. Counter it. I'm just going to throw out, I don't know, 205. Yay. Move up 1 pick and I get another re-roll, if you will, of different trade offers. 34, 102 in a second. That's actually not bad value for next year because that 2nd round pick should still be pretty good. And remember, they did trade their 2nd rounder this year to get Quinnen Williams. A 2, a 3, a 3, and a 2. Not bad, but that's moving down way too far. A 2, a 3, a 3, and a 2. Again, still moving down too far. So this would be the only offer I would consider. And is it worth giving up Sonny Styles here? We're going to hide it for now because the top piece on here is McCoy. I like Proctor as well, but can he really bend and play with the speed he's going to need? A really large human there. I can't pass up Styles. I have to take him. So basically I went chalk with my picks there. And as you can see, all the other names that come off. That's why I do not like this trade idea of holding on to the 2 picks if I'm the Cowboys. I need day 2 picks. Let's do a different one. Let's say we're the Giants. We'll do 3 rounds. We'll do fast. Enter. Number 1 pick. 4 trade offers. All right, here we go. We get a 1st, a 2nd, for a late 1, a 2, and a 3. No. Pick number 4 and 2 firsts from the Jets. Actually, this is 4 first-round picks and a very high 2. You would not get this offer in this year's draft, but that would be the most ridiculous offer. I would have to take that one. So obviously, we're taking up Pittsburgh's offer. Bye-bye. 3, you get a 1. This is a more realistic offer. You move down 2 spots. You pick up a first-rounder next year. You get a late first-rounder this year. So basically 3 firsts, a high 2, and a high 3. That's about the right value. This is a more realistic trade offer than what the Jets are offering. But it's still if you're doing a sim, obviously you're taking this one. But that's not realistic. So kind of keep that in mind with your simulations. This Cleveland one is pretty darn realistic. Dang ads. And what's the 3rd offer here? Number 8 for a 1, a 2 next year, a mid 2 this year, and a mid 3. It's not a bad offer. This is probably a legitimate offer if it was made in the NFL today. But if I'm the Giants, I'm not trading down from 1 for this package. It's a good package. It's a pretty good package. Because there's future assets in it, and I get the New Orleans picks, those should be really high picks. This means they're probably drafting Mendoza with the number 1 pick. Or another quarterback there. I mean, they don't have a great roster around that quarterback. And you're telling me you're giving up the top 3 picks this year to build around him? You're going to have to add in free agency. They don't have the money to do so. Those picks should be top 10 pick. This pick should be a top 10 next year. But I'm giving up the number 1. That's very tempting. I'm going to take the Jets pick out because it's just not realistic. I don't like doing sims where it's not realistic. And do I take 3? I think you get another bite at the apple of trade offers if you only move down 2 spots. So Cleveland in theory here is saying, Shedeur, bye, we're bringing in Mendoza. Either that or they're going after Reese, in which case I don't think they give you this trade offer. So this is obviously for Mendoza, and they've decided to move on from Shedeur. So from that standpoint, this trade probably isn't realistic, because I think they're going to roll with Shedeur next year. But we'll say for the concept of this simulation, that's their thought process. They've decided by the end of the season, Shedeur's not it. We want Mendoza. We make the move. You'd probably include Shedeur in this trade and maybe take out a 3rd-round pick. Something like that. But for now, we'll do that. So they did indeed take the quarterback Dante Moore, number 1. Mendoza came off the board. And now we move down 2 spots, and we still get the offer from the Saints, 8, 41, and a 2. The 2 first-round picks from the Cowboys. This I could see happening if Dallas has a great free agency. This is actually a legitimate offer, I think, because Averill Reese, to me, is their number 1 player on the board by a mile. He is the Micah Parsons type player in this draft, and giving up their 2 1s would basically be the finishing move for this. But again, that's only if they have a great free agency. If they don't have a great free agency and spend like they haven't spent in, 2 decades in free agency, which, again, just got to see how Jerry Jones takes it this offseason. But if they figure out how to solve their linebacker issues and get a safety and maybe solve things over there at corner, figure out what they're going to do with tackle, at least give them some options, re-sign Williams at running back, then this becomes a really good offer from Dallas. The last offer, I ain't moving down that far. Reject that one. So basically you move down to 8, you pick up a 2nd-round pick and a number 2, or you get 2 picks this year. That's really tempting. If I'm the Giants, I'd probably take that deal if I'm the Giants. Or do I move down to 8 and see if I can still get that deal? Because then I still get a high 2 next year, a mid 2 this year. But again, 2 1s. If I counter it and take out this pick, will they still do it? Nope. Let's say I offer 180 instead. Nope. $141. There we go. Cowboys move up. They take Reese, although in this sim they didn't, which kind of throws the whole sim off. They take Keldrick Falk. To me, he's an edge, sure, but Reese is by far the better player. Reese ain't lasting all the way to 8. That's for dang sure. Then you get down to 13, then your offers are 23, 54, no. 16 is, that's not a bad trade offer. I ain't taking that one. Moving down to 16 is a decent option, but I think they've already got a nice group of picks already. They still have some holes to fill. They've still got some premium players left. I would then be looking at probably a receiver or a tackle. I don't really think receiver, though, because they got Neighbors. Do they go tackle? Defense across the board, honestly, for me if I'm the Giants. Styles, but this is too early, I think, for him. Say they go the tackle out of Utah here, Lomo. You ain't trading that far down for 2 second-round picks. Reject that one. You certainly ain't doing that. I would probably take Peter Woods on the insides to kind of have Burns and Carter on the outside. Although I do like Sonny Styles as the linebacker. I don't think Peter Woods should be drafted this high, but Proctor as well, but I just drafted a tackle. I'll take Styles as well. And then your first round pick here, you ain't going down that far. Reject that one. No thank you. You just took a linebacker. You don't need C.J. Allen. Banks, possibly. I don't want Parker. Corner, Cisse. I haven't completely read up on all my corners yet, but there was a couple other corners that I still like. Washington, I think, is a really good player. I like him even better than some of the other DTs that they have above him on here. I'll take Washington for now. Kind of stop our sim there with the first rounders. So then you basically take your one, you get 3 number 1 picks out of it, a couple extra seconds, and another first next year. All kinds of fun to have with these simulators. But it's still early in the process, still before the combines. These things will change constantly. Just wanted to have a little fun with the simulator before we log out for the evening. Tucker is not going to Toronto. You think so, Northern? You think so? I'll give you Jeff Passan and several others who still think it's pretty certain he's going that direction, or at least seriously considering that. I think there's a good chance that he ends up in Toronto. I would say better than 50% at this point. Could other teams still be there? Of course, like the Dodgers, absolutely. Mets, sure. Yankees, I suppose. But I think the Blue Jays are certainly the favorite, at least in my eyes. Would the Eagles trade Tanner to get extra pick or picks? I think that as far as like the Eagles, they have all kinds of options they could go, but I think they've got to figure out what they're going to do at OC before they do anything else. All right, I got to get to work. Got a long day tomorrow. I work open to close, unfortunately, the next 2 days, and with the holiday season, it's either going to be boom or bust. So I'm hoping for bust. Last week was, to say miserable would be an understatement. That's why we did not do our video yesterday. I had nothing left. I literally had nothing. So I wanted to get on tonight and just kind of go over, all the different sports like we were planning on doing anyway on Sundays. But, talk a little bit about some of the headlines that we're seeing. Before we log out, I'll just update one more time just to see if anything is happening in Major League Baseball first, and we'll check our notifications. Another team annually that always wants a right-handed hitting outfielder, the Guardians, again, needing a right-handed hitting outfielder. Pirates are interested in Okamoto, no surprise there. We've talked about that a few times. Check out our notifications, nothing new there. Head over to MLB Trade Rumors and see if anything else is happening this evening. Nothing since the Contreras rumors. Let's check on the Astros notes, that's a new article there. The trade for Mike Burrows, the fallout from there. Said that they haven't just completely shut the door on Framber Valdez, but that's, I think, more lip service than anything else. The trade interest in Myers, of course. But with Melton being gone, do they keep Myers now? Melton was seen as a ready-made player right now. You live on the East Coast, you work at 7:30, get some rest, man. Usually after my live, it takes about another hour for me to just kind of calm down from the live. I usually just try to go grab a quick bite, chill, maybe watch some YouTube or Paramount or, Amazon or something. Just to kind of chill, just kind of calm down so I can sleep. I don't just immediately turn off the lights and hit the hay, so it takes a minute to kind of wind down. So I got to get going here in just a minute, but should be a long one. Hopefully your holiday season is going well, and you guys get some rest this holiday season. It does, pull on all of us in all kinds of different directions. So always look out for your fellow man, and hopefully you guys have a great holiday season. I'm going to go ahead and head out for the evening, but thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button, liking the video, even sticking with me. It's been 2 hours and 30 minutes of a live, so it's been a lot of fun, impromptu as well. Didn't even warn you guys, and here you guys are. So you guys are really generous with your time and joining us, so I appreciate it. Thank you for your support, and if you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like, subscribe. We'll be live Monday through Friday, usually between 9 and 11 is when we'll start, and we'll go for an hour or two, just kind of depends on the news of the day. We are expecting some news this week, so expect to get some notifications on your phone tomorrow. Hopefully, it won't be too crazy, and I can at least post a little short if it's some of the biggest news that we're expecting. But if not, rest assured we'll be live immediately when I do get home. So appreciate you guys' support. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night. We'll start tomorrow promptly at 9 o'clock. So we'll see you guys again tomorrow at 9. Hit that like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Y'all stay safe out there. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow at 9.